Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Zenaton, and welcome to today's video for Legends of Runeterra. We got a long one today. We're gonna be doing a video that I like to do with every set release, every card release. We're going to be going through every single new card that has been released in the latest set beyond the Bandlewood, and we're going to rate them all in terms of how good they are for constructed. So that means we're not going to look at things like how good they are in expedition. That won't go into the deciding factor of what the rating will be. Another thing is, this is my own personal opinion. Um, so I'm going to be wrong on a couple of cards. It's just, the facts. It's just the state of how things are. Like, card I might say is really good and really OP might be bad and turn out to be terrible. A card I might say is really mediocre and just bad might turn out to be insane and actually get nerfed. It's happened before, it'll keep happening as long as I do these videos. But yeah, quick overview for the video and before we get into it. We are going to be using a 5-star rating system. There are no half stars, so every card will be rated from 0 to 5 stars. 5 stars is the best, 0 is the worst, so 0 stars is pretty much like meme cards, unplayable garbage cards. 1 star is like kind of unplayed, but with a little bit of potential there. 2 and 3 is really where most of the cards are going to fit in. These are the kind of cards that are just, they're kind of like 2 stars is like niche cards that fit into a deck, but that's kind of it. 3 stars is like, it does its job, it fills a role, it does it well, but it's never like really anything special. It never feels insanely busted, but it does its job and it does it well. Maybe it falls off in the early game, maybe it falls off in the late game, but it does a job and it does it well, and that's why it gets 3 stars. It could also be just a really strong tech kind of card for certain matchups. Anyway, next is 4 stars, 4 stars. These are the good stuff. Really, really powerful cards here, but there's usually something holding them back, in my opinion, from being the top of the meta, top of the rating 5 stars, and 5 stars are those really OP cards. These are the kind of cards that are deck defining, meta defining cards. These are the kind of cards that you look at and you're like, wow, that card's busted. How did that card get made? Also, we're going to go in alphabetical order in terms of regions and cards, except we'll save Bandle City for last because it is the newest region. And because we have a new mechanic in the form of multi-region cards, that kind of threw a wrench into how I was going to categorize them. I'll be honest with you, I don't have any kind of method here. I just kind of threw each multi-region card into one of the regions. So, for example, I believe I threw Poppy, a Demacia Bandle City card, into the Demacia ratings. Anyway, I think that's about it. Like I said, these are all just my personal opinions, so I could be wrong. I would love to hear your personal opinions on certain cards and why you think I am wrong or right or whatever. So, enough talking. We got a lot of regions. We got 10 whole regions to go through and a lot of cards. So let's start off with Bilgewater, a region that I got a lot of cards. A lot of good cards, too. Starting off, though, we got kind of a bad one. We got Abyssal Guard. 4 mana, 2/3 fearsome. When you cast a spell, give me +2/+0 this round. This card's trash. I'm sorry. I'm not even going to try and sugarcoat it. There's some cute stuff you can do, like play this card with Riven's Blade Fragments. Like, that's cute. Giving it, say, like, Overwhelm or Quick Attack or something, and it can get really big really quick. I just think this card is a little too slow. I don't know what kind of deck wants this. I feel like any kind of spell spammy deck doesn't like this card. Like, let's say like you're a more control-y spell spam deck. Why are you playing a 4 mana 2/3 fearsome that grows? If you're a more tempo-oriented deck, this card is a huge tempo loss. Maybe at 3 mana I would like it, but at 4 mana, in my opinion, way too slow, way too unplayable, way too fragile, and the fact that you need to even put in some more work makes it just garbage in my opinion. I'm gonna give it 0 stars. I think this card's bad. One of the worst cards in the set, in all honesty. Next up, though, who do we have? We got Avatar of the Tides. Okay, we can go from garbage to still kind of garbage, but not absolute trash. Avatar of the Tides, 6 mana, 4/5. If you would get a mana gem, instead refill your spell mana. When you cast a spell, create in hand a random spell that costs 3 or less and give it fleeting. So this card's slow, it's clunky, but it gives a lot of value. So unlike Abyssal Guard, which is slow and a tempo loss and doesn't give you much of a reward, we're getting a little bit of a reward here, and that reward is you're getting a random spell. The reason I don't like this card, even though I love value, is, well, making it so you can't get more mana does hurt a bit, so you might even have to hold this card until you get to around like 9 mana or so until you play it, so it's not even really a 6-drop, even though it does technically cost 6 mana, you're probably not going to play it early. And 2, RNG always makes me a little hesitant to like a card. So, sure, lots of value, but just too much RNG and too slow. So I'm only going to give it 1 star, though. I think if the meta slows down and a weird Bilgewater control-y kind of deck starts to take form, I could see this as like a cute little top end of it, but I don't think this card's good enough for anything at the moment. Next card, Ebb and Flow, and then Ebb and Flow. So Ebb is a 2 mana fast spell. It says deal 2 randomly to an enemy or the enemy nexus, then create a Flow in hand. Flow is a 2 mana fleeting burst speed spell that heals something for 2, and then you get Ebb and Flow, which is basically the 2 cards combined. 2 mana fleeting fast speed spell, deal 2 randomly to an enemy or enemy nexus, and then heal something on your side for 2. I like this card. It's obviously meant for spell spam decks because it's 3 spells in 1 card. It's healing in Bilgewater, which is not something Bilgewater really does. I think the only healing card in Bilgewater I can think of off the top of my head is maybe Citrus Courier. There might be another one I can't think of, but that's the only one I can think of at the moment. So the issue, I think, is most spell spammy decks want to be very aggressive, very tempo-y, and this card's a huge tempo loss. If it weren't for the fact that Ebb, and then I guess Ebb and Flow, could hit the Nexus, I'd actually like this card a lot. The fact that even if your opponent has only 1 unit on the field, you might lose the coin flip and your Ebb might hit Nexus makes me not like this card. So you might say, oh, okay, well, why don't you put in a more aggressive deck which doesn't mind something hitting face? Sure, but I feel like the problem with that is I'd rather just play other spells that are good, help you fight for the board, help you get more tempo than just copies of Ebb. Great spell for Nami, because it's her champion spell, I believe, but as for putting this actual card in my constructed decks, I'm not too big of a fan of it. I tried putting this in some kind of like control Nami deck, and as I was fine-tuning any kind of Nami deck, I just started cutting these cards from the deck and putting in other spells. So I like it. It's got some good value to it. Maybe if a slower, more control-y Nami deck becomes a thing, I could see this as a couple of copies in the deck. So I'm going to give it 2 stars. It's a little niche and stuff, but I think it fills a niche. It gives you a little bit of healing. Like 4 healing is a decent amount of healing. So yeah, I like it, but I don't think it's that good. Okay, speaking of good though, on the other hand, probably one of the best cards in the new set. We got Fleet Admiral Shelley. 5 mana, 3/3, elusive attune. Kind of bad stats for a 5-drop, but whatever. For every 2 spells you play in a round, grant other allies +1/+1. This is insane. So Shelley needs to cast these, or needs to see you cast these spells, so you have to play Shelley first before you start casting them, so there's that. But this card is nuts. Thanks to burst speed spells and fast speed spells, you're probably going to get minimum 1 proc from Shelley. If you're playing Shelley and you can't get at least 1 proc, I feel like you did it wrong. I feel like if your opponent is playing a deck that you know has removal that could remove Shelley easily, like say Piltover and Zon deck, so like get excited and gotchas, you need to have either a way to protect Shelly or a way to trigger Shelly at least once, or both preferably. So, you know, like Sunblessed Vigor and Targan, Pale Cascade. I think there's that one card in Bilgewater as well. That's like, it gives a unit +2/+1 and it costs 3, but it costs 2 if you draw it that turn. I think there's that card too. I can't even remember the name of that card because it's a bad card, but there's also that. But yeah, this card wins games. You got the obvious strategy, which is just give your elusives extra stats, but giving challengers some stats, giving overwhelm unit stats, giving lifesteal unit stats. This card's just great. I mean, like, honestly, I could actually see this card getting nerfed in the future. But I don't know, it feels good enough. The fact that it's a little fragile for a 5-drop makes me feel like Shelly's fine, but really strong. Still though, 5 stars from me. This card is crazy good. Now then, what do we have next? I think we got, oh yeah, okay. We went from a crazy good card to this guy. We got Journeying Sandhopper. I don't know what this guy is doing. 3 mana, 4/3 attune, and that's it. Doesn't even have a cool tribe, so I can't be like, well, at least he's a Poro or something. I think this card is bad. I don't know why you would play this in a deck. I'm not even going to talk too much about him. I have no way to even try and like pretend he's good. Attune's kind of cute for like Nami level up, but there's so many better cards you can play. Giving it 0 stars. Unplayable. Garbage card. Don't play this guy. If you had another keyword or something, or some kind of extra line of text, sure. But I'm not playing a 3 mana 4/3 attune. Okay, stats are the cost, but attune's not enough to make me play 3 mana 4/3s. Okay, well, this card, I don't think I have to talk much about this card. Mirai Great Mother, 4 mana 3/3. When I'm summoned, create 5 random 6-cost spells in your deck and lower their cost to 3. Basically, RNG the card. This card could win you a game right away. Here's the problem. It's way too RNG. I'm talking about RNG with other cards. This card is pure RNG. First off, assuming you even make your deck tailored to find these spells by playing no other spells that cost 3 or less, and then you play Zap. Okay, like, that's cute and all, but only a few of those cards are winning the game. And here's the other thing. A lot of those expensive spells don't even do anything. Like, I guess, like Ascended's Rise, the 7 mana card that ascends your Ascendeds. That card that levels up your Ascendeds or whatever. That card's, well, it's going to do nothing. That's a 3 mana do nothing there in the deck. But again, it could also just win the game with, say, like a War Mother's Call or like, I don't know, Field of Rush or whatever. So this, I think, is a perfect example of a meme. 0 stars from me. Sure, it can win games because of RNG, but it's way too RNG for me. Even in a deck that can consistently pull out the spells, the RNG is just through the roof here. It's not consistent enough. Way too much of a meme, so 0 stars from me. Okay, Mirai Songstress, 2 mana 3/2. When I'm summoned, if you've cast a spell this round, grant me elusive. I like it. Little tough to get this card on curve, like on turn 2. But a 2 mana 3/2 elusive is pretty solid. I mean, I can't remember the name of the card right now, but there was that Ionia card. It's the 2 mana 2/2 that when you summon it, you have to bounce a unit, recall a unit back to your hand. Navori something, maybe? I can't remember the name. Conspirator? I think that's it. Navori Conspirator. That card used to be a 3/2 for 2. And I believe they made it a 2 mana 3/2 elusive because they felt that forcing you to bounce something back to your hand was enough of a downside. And in fact, it turned out to actually be a good thing because you could bounce things like Omen Hawks and so on and so forth. So, sure, 2 mana 3/2 stat line is good, but it's a little bit tough to get this on curve. Like, I guess you could argue, like, oh, you play like a 1 mana card with a tune, play a 1 mana spell, and then you have a turn 2 3/2 or something. Yeah, that's cute and all, but it's a little tough to do, and I feel like there's better things you could do in an elusive deck. Still, though, it is a very in a vacuum, it's a very good card. A 2-mana 3/2 elusive in a vacuum is solid. I'll give it 2 stars. If you can consistently proc it, it's great. And there's always like what, Warning Shot, I guess, is a 0-mana card. But I don't know if you would play Warning Shot into Songstress and your reward's what, a 2-mana 3/2 elusive for 2 cards? I don't know. Next card though. Mirai Warden. I like this card. 2-mana 2/1. When I'm summoned, summon a random 1-cost follower. Pretty good card. Comes down quick. Lets you go wide really fast. Basically, it's Bilgewater's House Spider. Yes, the fact that you can get screwed by RNG and get basically a blank on the 1-cost follower, for example, getting something like Dragon Chow, is a little mediocre, but it's still good enough. The 1 health does hurt a lot, though. Like, 1 health on 2-drops do make bad cards. Like, especially in a meta where Make It Rain and Vile Feast and other things are very good. But I still like the card. It does its job well, and it does it solidly. There is a potential to low roll, though, but I think it's a solid card. Very nice 2-drop, so it's a solid 3 stars from me. Really nice with Bandlewood, which we'll look at a little later because of the random 1-cost follower can be from any region. Now then, our first champion. We have Nami. Now, I might be rating Nami a little, how to put it? I might be underrating Nami is what I'm going to say here. Nami is so good. 3-mana 2/3, attune. When you cast a spell, grant +1/+0 to the weakest other ally that isn't immobile. I assume they made it like that so you can't buff things like what's it called? Monkey Idol. Because buffing Monkey Idol would actually be pretty nuts. Or buffing Powder Kegs would also be kind of dumb too. To level up Nami, you have to have gained 7 spell mana in the game. So she doesn't have to see you gain it. So really easy to level her up. Her champ spell is Ebb. We already talked about that. Solid spell. Now, when you level up Nami is when things get actually crazy. When she levels up, she's a 3-mana 3/4 with a tune still. Okay, pretty standard. But now when you cast a spell, the weakest ally now gets +2/+1 instead of just +1/+0. Getting health from buffs is so big. We've seen this numerous times before where a card gives health buffs, even if only temporary, and Nami's is not temporary, it's permanent. And those cards were OP and had to get nerfed. 2 examples real quick. Grand Plaza, Veiled Temple. You could also argue, well, streamer, those are landmarks, they're hard to remove. True. Very true. So, here's the thing though. You can protect Nami. Just pair Nami up with a region like Ionia or Targon and protect Nami with, all those protection spells. So, Deny, Twin Disciplines, Sunblessed Vigor, Pale Cascade, etc., of course, Guiding Touch, whatever. Bastions. I feel like most people are going to say, oh, so you think this card's OP. I kind of don't think she's OP, but I do think Nami might get nerfed. How she'll get nerfed, I don't know. Getting health is so good. The problem is, I feel if they nerf her by making it so she doesn't give health when she levels up, basically she just gives +2/+0, she'll be unplayable. Look what happened to Grand Plaza and Veiled Temple. They got nerfed and no longer gave health, and you almost never see those cards anymore. I feel like the perfect way to nerf Nami, in all honesty, if they want to nerf her, is either take away a point of health or make her 1 mana more expensive to try and slow her down. So, we're talking about all these nerfs and stuff for Nami. Again, like I said, I don't think she's that OP. She's extremely strong, but I think the strength in Nami decks is not the first Nami. The first Nami is actually really easy to deal with. It's the second Nami, which is the problem, because you usually will have to spend some removal, like 2 or 3 cards even, because they're going to try and protect their Nami with protection spells. The problem becomes, you use all that removal to get through Nami and all the protection spells, and then they play another Nami. That's the problem. Still, though, I'm going to give Nami only 4 stars. I honestly had to fight myself before I gave her 5 stars. But I think, so my problem is the fragility of Nami and the fact that she's kind of just stuck in a spell heavy deck does sort of hurt her versatility. She's not like a, say, I'm trying to think of other champions I've given 5 stars to. I think I gave 5 stars to Zoe, I want to say. Like, look at Zoe. Zoe, sure, she's not as played right now, but Zoe goes into so many decks. Tempo decks, control decks, combo decks, etc., etc. Nami only is really a tempo card. Like, people have tried, myself included, have tried to make Nami more of a control card, but it didn't work, sadly. Still, though, I could see her getting nerfed, so 4 stars for me. And what's the last card for Bilgewater? We got Tidal Wave, a card I probably overrate. Well, when I first saw it, I overrated it. Tidal Wave is a 3-mana slow spell. Deal 2 to 2 different randomly targeted enemies and create a Crashing Wave in your deck. Crashing Wave deals 2 to 4 different randomly targeted enemies, and then you get a Colossal Wave in your deck, which deals 4 to all enemies and the enemy nexus. There's that word again, random. If it weren't for the random part of this card, I think this card would actually be really good. That and it's slow speed, so that hurts a lot. It's also, in general, really, really slow. And I'm not talking about just the spell speed. The fact that the first form of it, Tidal Wave, is so bad. Like, I get it. It's supposed to be like, okay, you're playing a bad card now in the hopes that in the future you can play Crashing and Colossal Wave, which are both really good for their cost. Like, Crashing Wave, I mean, well, Colossal Wave's obviously great, but Crashing Wave's pretty decent for the cost too. I just think it's too slow. If the meta slows down, sure, and you might say like, well, streamer, you have to actually find the spells. Deep Meditation, Pod, Zap, all finds a spell for you. So I think there are ways to find the spells reliably in your deck with cards and card draw. I just think it's too slow. And of course, you can try and be cute and do like Tidal, Crashing, Colossal, whatever wave with Karma, but that's way too slow. And that means you're like a Ionia Bilgewater control deck, which is... ugh. Anyway, though, I'm gonna give this thing 1 star. I think it has a little potential behind it if it's a slower meta, but it has to be a really slow meta for this. And again, the RNG, the randomness really makes me not like the card. Now then, let's go to Demacia. Demacia, I believe, only had multi-region cards. Only 2, I believe. We're only going to look at 1 here for the Demacia region. I think I just wanted to show off the champion. We got Poppy. One of my favorite champions of the set. I'm probably underrating her here in all honesty too, by the way, with this rating, but we got Poppy. 4 mana, 4/3. She's a Yordle. We have no Yordle synergy, by the way, so every single Yordle we had to look at and be like, okay, there might be some future potential with Yordle synergy, because right now there is none, but they put the Yordle tag here. So that does tell us a little bit like they're going to maybe in the future most likely add some Yordle synergy. Anyway, what does Poppy do? Well, she's a 4 mana 4/3 that when she attacks, she gives herself and all allies with equal or less power than her +1/+1. Basically a Bannerman with a repeatable effect, but she has to attack and she doesn't buff the entire board, only those that are weaker than her. To level up Poppy, she has to have attacked 3 times. Extremely hard to level her up, but when she levels up, she now has impact. She gives her units, her allies, +2/+2 instead of +1/+1, and she gives them impact instead. Kind of like Misfortune, with her level up. Not similarly mechanically, but similar in that if you leveled up Misfortune, you're probably in a good spot. If you level up Poppy, you're probably winning the game, unless you try to make some weird deck that's like playing a lot of rallies and cataclysms and whatever and free attacks to try and level up Poppy, but that sounds like a meme. Her champion spell, Keeper's Verdict. 6 mana slow spell, place an enemy on top of the enemy deck. Way too expensive. And this is the reason I'm giving Poppy the rating that she's getting. can't just evaluate champions based on the two cards themselves, the level 1 and level 2 version. You have to take into consideration the champion spell, in my opinion. Poppy and her cards, her level 1 and 2 version, are really good. There's just two things here that are keeping me from giving her 5 stars. Her champ spell and the fact she gets to attack. So with that said and done, I'm giving Poppy 4 stars. So let's reiterate. Let's talk more about that. First off, her champ spell is so garbage. You might say, like, well, Irelia has a bad champ spell, and Irelia had to get nerfed twice. Sure, but Irelia was busted. And more like Blade Dance was busted with the payoff of Azir and friends, but whatever. The other problem is having to attack does kind of hurt Poppy's power level, if that makes sense. So a little weak to stuns, and the fact that she does have to put herself in combat does hurt her. Sure, she'll be a 5-4 when she attacks, but still, she's a little light on the health side of things, especially before she attacks. She's only 3 health, and 3 health is kind of easy to remove by turn 4. So that's why she's going to be prevented from getting that 5th star. Still though, very solid card, one of my favorite champions from the new set. Great card. Next up, we got Freljord. Freljord only got, I believe, 2 cards, both of which are multi-region cards, both of which are Poros. And the first one is Poro Sled. 5 mana, 5/5 with impact. Attack, summon an attacking random 1-cost Poro. This card's pretty solid. Lots of value here. Pretty nice for multi-region carrying decks too, because it hits 2 regions at once. Overall, just a solid card, I think. If Poros ever become a thing again, I think Poro decks would love this card, especially because just one Poro snack makes this thing really annoying. So I'm going to give it 3 stars. Kind of slow though, doesn't do much. A little bit of RNG on the attack side, but it's a very solid card in general. Now the next card, Proto Poro. 1 mana, 1/1 impact. You know, the standard 1 mana, 1/1 Poro that every region gets. Basically the Bandle City Poro. Meh. The fact that it's a multi-region card, though, does save it, in my opinion, from being unplayable. So I'm going to give it 1 star because of the whole multi-region thing, because it's both a Freljord card and a Bandle City card. So it gets some multi-region synergy, so it can be free with certain cards like the Mayor, who we'll look at later. Anyway, that's all of Freljord. Very fast. We got another fast region here. We got Ionia. Ionia only got 1 card, sadly. Tailcloak Matriarch. And I'm really sad to say it, but it's kind of a bad card. 5 mana, 4/5. Each round, the first time you recall a follower, summon an exact ephemeral copy of it. This, to me, feels like a card that at the moment seems bad. But in the future, might be good. We've had this a few times where they'll release a card for a region and everyone's like, why is this a thing? Who would play this card? This card is garbage. And then they release like a new mechanic or a champion or something, and everyone's like, oh wow, this card that was released before, which everyone laughed at and said was bad, is now great. This is a very unique effect. And we also have kind of a hint here in the artwork too. Ari is in the artwork down there. So a lot of people are guessing like maybe this will be an Ari card. Maybe Ari's some kind of like Ionia recall stun synergistic champion. So yeah, but for now, with the cards we have in the game, 1 star from me. This card is extremely slow. There's a lot of value you can get here, but it's just way too slow in the current meta, and there's just not enough synergy in my opinion. So I'm sorry, but 1 star. There is some potential though if the meta slows down and more cards get printed, but for now this is not good enough. Now, Noxus. Oh, Noxus. You got a lot of stuff, and a lot of it's good. And first off, we got the Ancient Warmonger. Very simple card here to evaluate, in my opinion. 5 mana, 5/5 Overwhelm. That alone is already a solid card. 5 mana, 5/5s are decent, as we saw with the Poro Sled. Overwhelm is a pretty solid keyword, one of the better aggressive keywords. I'd say it's the second best aggressive keyword after elusive. So just that alone is a solid card. When I'm discarded, grant your strongest ally +2/+0. That's really nice. This gives it some flexibility, so you can play as a 5-mana 5/5 Overwhelm, which is solid. But you can also use it as a burst speed half of a brother's bond, kind of like you play, I don't know, Rummage or Portal Cannon, and you give your strongest ally +2/+0. If your opponent didn't block that, that's an extra 2 face damage. Really solid card here. Just overall, pretty good. 3 whole stars for me. Never really look at this card and I'm like, oh man, this card's busted. This card's OP. Another good quick note though is because it's so beefy, 5/5 of stats, it helps out Scion to level up quickly, which we'll look at Scion later, and I have a lot to say about Scion. Next up, another 5-drop. We got Fallen Reckoner. 5-mana 4/3 Overwhelm. Kind of bad stats for the cause. That's like the stats of a 3-drop. So it has to do something else. And it does a lot of stuff. When I'm summoned, grant can't block to the weakest enemy. This is a permanent thing. Keep that in mind. Last breath, create a Risen Reckoner in hand. Risen Reckoner is a 3-mana 6/3 Overwhelm ephemeral. When I'm summoned, grant can't block to the weakest enemy. This is slow. This is a lot of mana you're investing, but this is a very scary effect. But it's so slow is my issue. And the fact, like, it does kind of screw chump blockers, but here's the thing. Chump blockers not being able to block's not the biggest thing because they have Overwhelm, so it's not like it's mattering too much. You might say, like, well, the chump blockers could block other things they had. Of course, of course. Still, though, I like this card. I think it is a good card. I just think it's very meta dependent, and it needs to go in a very aggressive Noxus deck, but it needs to be in a slower meta. And we're not in that kind of meta right now, in my opinion. So, for me, I'm only giving this guy 2 stars. I'm sorry, Fallen Reckoner. You're strong, you're scary. Only 2 stars for me. You're just a little too dependent on how fast the meta is, in my opinion. I guess you could also argue, like, there's some cute stuff you can do with, like, the Risen Reckoner and ephemeral stuff, but that's a little too much of a meme, in my opinion. Oh, now this card. Now this card is nuts. Fallen Rider. Not even much to talk about here. 2-mana 3/1 Fearsome. That alone, solid stat line. 2-mana 3/1's a little meh for a 2-drop. Fearsome helps it out, but, 1 health for a 2-drop's kind of meh. When I'm discarded, create a Risen Rider in hand. Now this is where this thing gets scary. 2-mana 4/2 Fearsome. This card is so good. Gives you some good discard fodder. Really annoying card to block in the early game. Just extremely annoying. It is a little tied to, like, how good this card is a little tied to just how good the Fearsome keyword is in the meta. So it is a little tied to the meta and, like, how many 2-mana 3/2s there are. But I'm still giving this thing a 4-star. 4 out of 5 stars. It doesn't get that 5th star because it needs, for 2 reasons. It needs a little help because if you're not discarding this for the Risen Rider, it kind of sucks. And if the meta is hostile to Fearsomes, like there's a lot of 2-mana 3/2s, it sucks. Still. But still, solid card. Very big fan of it. Next up, Grave Physician. 2-mana 2/2. Play the card, discard a card to draw a unit. It's like Noxus's Sump Dredger / Zonite Urchin. Unlike them, though, this guy only draws a unit. The other 2 just draw from the top of the deck. I like him. I like this card. 2-mana 2/2 is not a great stat line, but it's not the worst. But this guy's so good. Noxus decks can use this to find things like Captain Farron, Lost Soul, who we'll talk about next, I believe. This card's just great. Helps you keep the gas going, getting more and more units to keep fighting on board. It lets you activate some of your discard synergies. Solid card overall. The only problem with this card is it does feel a little on the lower impact of things, and it is a little slow because it's not a spell, so you can't play it at faster burst speed, unlike, say, like Get Excited or Rummage or something, but it's still a solid card, so I'm going to give this a whole 3 stars. It's fine, it does its job, plays the role of discard enabler while giving you some extra gas in hand and activating your discard synergy. So 3 stars. Now then, I mentioned this guy a little bit. Lost Soul. We got a lot to talk about with this guy. 8 mana 5/4. When I'm summoned or discarded, create a Twin Blade Revenant in hand. Twin Blade Revenant, as you can see on the left, is a 4 mana 4/3 challenger that has Last Breath, create a Lost Soul in hand. So you got like a kind of infinite chain value combo kind of thing going here. There's like an infinite circle where it's like the Lost Soul creates the Revenants, Revenants create Lost Souls, so on and so forth. That infinite value train is so good. This card just lets Noxus keep grinding and keep getting more and more value against decks you would assume would destroy it. Also, the fact that cards like Equinox, and specifically Targon as a region, are not that popular outside of certain decks, makes it hard to deal with a Twin Blade Revenant. So, yeah, ugh. Plus, we haven't talked about it yet, but Aloof Travelers discarding Lost Soul is always painful. And my biggest issue with this is we just got done with Merciless Hunter. 3 mana 4/3, give something vulnerable. Sure, this is not as good. The Twin Blade's not as good as that, but, you know, the trade-off's infinite value. It's now 4/2, I believe. Twin Blade Revenant is so good. It's got such good stats for the cost. Like 4 mana 4/3 is not great stats for the cost, but it's serviceable. But getting the challenger keyword and creating another Lost Soul for more discard synergy is just insane value. Gives you crazy good value, great board presence, and board control. This card does it all. Now, of course, there are times where you'll be sad where you'll have a handful of Lost Souls and no way to discard them. Of course, that's sad, but if you're a discard deck and you have no way to discard cards, you're probably already in a bad situation anyway. Still, though, with all that said, easy 5 stars from me. This card, honestly, I could see getting a nerf. And if you asked me, the way I would nerf this card is making the Twin Blade 5 mana. I think the Twin Blade Revenant just comes down too quick and too often and is for just too little mana. Just feels too good for 4 mana because of the, again, infinite value, I feel. But maybe Riot themselves think it's okay. I don't, in my honest opinion. No, next one. What do we got next? Oh, we got a garbage card. We got Noble Rebel. 3 mana 3/2. Overwhelm. Grant me +2/+1 once you've discarded 3+ cards this game. So, when it's active, it's a 3 mana 5/3. Compare this to Iron Ballista, which is in the same region. Iron Ballista is a 3 mana 4/3 with Overwhelm. So, you're getting 1 extra attack point for this card compared to Iron Ballista. That's not enough for me, in all honesty. In my opinion, that's just not a big enough payoff for me to play Noble Rebel over Iron Ballista. And for like discard decks, I feel there's just so many better cards you can play, and for non-discard decks, you got Iron Ballista. The one cute thing you can do is you could, I guess, discard cards during combat to give it +2/+1, which is kind of cute. But again, I feel it's just a little too much for not enough payoff, in other words. Still, though, it's 3 mana 5/3 for 3 is solid, and if you can activate this consistently by 3, it's a solid card. So I'm gonna give it 1 star, though. If more and more discard cards get printed and the synergy gets better and better, and the deck gets even more and more faster, I could see this card being played, but for now, I think it's bad. Oh man, we just got done with a bad card, but before that, we had Lost Soul, who was insane. We're back to more insane cards. We got Reborn Grenadier. 1 mana, 3/2 ephemeral. That's a terrible... Actually, that's a good stat line. What am I saying? That's a great stat line, but ephemeral is a terrible keyword. To play this card, discard a card. When I'm discarded, summon an exact copy of me. This has versatility. I love versatility on cards. So it's both discard fodder and a discard enabler. So you can use it as the card to get discarded, but you can also use it to discard the card you want to discard, like a Lost Soul or something. The other thing is, with cards like Rummage and Poro Cannon, you can also use it as a burst speed way to get an extra blocker / attacker. That's kind of pretty good, as we've seen from other cards. Like that 4-mana Mistwraith card, whose name I can never remember. So yeah, I don't think there's too much to say about this card. Card's crazy good. Turn 1 Zonite Urchin, discarding Reborn Grenadier's nuts. I'm going to give this thing easily 5 stars. So, 2 5-star cards in Noxus. They're making out really well today. Next up, Roar of the Slayer. Also, it's Scion's champ spell, who we'll talk about a little bit later on. But Roar of the Slayer as a spell itself, 3 mana fast speed spell. To play this card, discard a card, kill the weakest enemy. It's okay. Here's the problem with this card. Sure, it activates discard synergy, but I think there's enough discard enablers in the game now. We don't have to play cards like this. 2, your opponent can play combat tricks to pseudo dodge this by playing like Twin Disciplines, Sharp Sight, Riposte, etc., to buff their weak enemy to keep it from dying. And 3, if this was in a different region, sure, I would like this card. The problem with this card is it's in Noxus. You have good enough removal, in my opinion. You got Noxian Fervor, you got Death's Hand, you got Ravenous Flock, you got Culling Strike. Those cards are all really good. Sure, this card is somewhat unique in what it does. Plus, it's a 3-mana card, so Tribeam loves it. So I like it as like a 1 to 2 of in certain more control-y decks. In the right meta, like it's really cute at killing really weak but backline champions, like say Azir's. That's nice. So I like it as like a couple of copies in a deck, but just a little not good enough in my opinion. And the other issue is I feel the problem is it's in Noxus, and Noxus has good enough removal that it doesn't need a card like this. So 1 star from me. Now, next card. Salt and Stitches. 2 mana focus speed spell. To play, discard a card, and you summon a Reborn Grenadier, and it gets +2/+0 this round. We already know what Grenadier does. You can see it on the left. I like the card. I just don't think it's good enough. I think it's a solid card. Similar to Roar of the Slayer, it's a discard enabler, but I think Noxus has enough of those cards and doesn't need to play discard enablers that I don't want to say are bad, because this is not bad. It's just that the other, in my opinion, discard enablers are better. Like, well, Draven Spinning Axes, and especially if you go into other regions like Poro Cannons and Rummage. If this was burst speed, sure. Like, focus speed is nice, but at burst speed, I could see this being really nice. So you could, get a blocker at burst speed. But I assume that's why it's focus speed and not burst speed. So for that reason, I'm going to give it 1 star. I think there might be some potential here, because you do get another attacker without passing priority, and that's pretty strong. And it does enable discard synergy, but just like I said, you heard my reasons, so it's only getting 1 star. Now, the big boy himself, the angry stomach furnace man. We have Scion. There's a lot to unpack here with good old Scion. Scion. Oh my god. There's so much here. Scion is a 7-mana 3/6. Terrible stat line for a 7-drop. But we can't look at just stats alone, right? Overwhelm. Okay. It's getting a little solid here. When I'm discarded, grant your strongest ally Overwhelm and place me in the deck. Okay, so he can be used as some discard fodder. Pretty solid. I have +1/+0 for each card you've discarded this game, maxing out at +7/+0. So In a discard deck, he's pretty much a 10-6. To level up Scion, you have to have discarded or summoned 35 plus power. He counts himself for summons. So if you've discarded 7 cards, in other words, he's a 10-6, so he'll be 10 of that 35 power. That's terrible, or that's not terrible. It's terrible if you're playing against Scion. That's great if you're the Scion player. So what does he do when he levels up, though? Well, he's a 7-mana 10-6. One of the few champions who doesn't get extra health when he levels up. He has Overwhelm as well. When he dies, you get Scion return, and then when he's discarded, he still does the whole giving the strongest guy Overwhelm. That actually, discard to give something Overwhelm is actually really annoying too, since you can give something Overwhelm at burst speed. But what does he do when he comes back as Scion return? Well, he's a 7-mana 10-4 with Overwhelm and Ephemeral, but when he's summoned Rally, he's a finisher. He is the cool Tryndamere. Tryndamere wishes he was as good as Scion is here. This guy is insane. You need to find a way to deal with him when he comes down, whether that's through a stun, a bounce spell like Will of Ionia, a transformation spell, or a silence. You need to deal with Scion when he comes down. You could technically wait a turn, though, if your opponent doesn't have the attack token, but him just being on the field is annoying, because if you attack, they might just block with Scion and have him die and just get Scion returned and rally and attack and kill you. That and the fact that his champion spell is Roar of the Slayer. That's a pretty decent champion spell. Like, you heard my reasoning for not liking Roar of the Slayer, but as a champion spell, it's a solid champion spell. Like, my god, this guy does it all. He's so easy to level up. He ends games fast, and to top it all off, he's got a great champion spell. Easily 5 stars from me. Honestly, nerf Scion. There you go, I said it, and I'll say it again. Nerf Scion, please. I hate him. He's bullying me, and he keeps beating me up. Anyway. Oh, for the next card. Well, okay, I'm sorry. We just went from a great card to, well, this. The Lady of Blood. 4-mana 2-4. When you discard a non-fleeting unit, create a fleeting copy of it in hand. Like a lot of cards, this card's just too slow. Lots of value, but again, it's just too slow. I don't think I need to talk too much about this card. Terrible stats for the cost. Really, really fragile. Sure, it gives you some value, but that value is slow. You still need to do something, which is called discarding cards, to get that value. Maybe in like some weird discard control list I can see it, but discard control doesn't really exist at the moment. So for that reason, I'm going to give this card 1 star, purely because I can see that it has a little potential in an archetype that doesn't exist yet, and that is like discard control, discard value, whatever you want to call it. And what do we have as the last card? Oh, it's this card. Oh no. Oh, for the last Noxus card, we got a pretty bad one here. We have Weapons of the Lost. One of the worst cards in the set. I don't think I have to talk too much about this card. Weapons of the Lost. 8 mana, slow spell. Deal 3 to a unit and summon a Trifarian Shieldbreaker. I decided to put a picture of it on the left because no one remembers this card exists. Because even though it's been in the game since the game was first released, no one's actually played this card in the game. Outside of Expeditions. But yeah, this card, it sucks. 3 damage for 8 mana? That's so slow. Like, I mean, it's slow, it's expensive, and the spell itself isn't even that good. Like, this spell could honestly be fast, and it would still be bad. Maybe at like 5 mana at fast speed, I would like this. Actually, at 5 mana at fast speed, this would actually be pretty good. But still, this card's just awful. I honestly think that this is just Expedition filler. So 0 stars from me, just bad overall. Now then, let's head to P&Z. And let's start off with a bad card. Why not, apparently? So, we got advanced intel. 1 mana burst speed spell, plant 2 flash bomb traps randomly in the top 10 of the enemy deck. Garbage card, 0 stars. I don't think I have to talk too much about this card. Doesn't do enough here. It's just not doing enough. It's not worth a whole card in your deck. Unlike, say, I think it's called Mushroom Cloud, the one that shuffles in 5 puff caps in your opponent's deck. That can be used to power level Teemo and get a fast Teemo level up. This doesn't help Caitlyn, who we'll see later. So 0 stars for me. I don't think I have to talk too much about it. Just not enough for a whole card, even at 1 mana. Next up, though, we have Ambush. I like it. 2 mana burst speed spell. Give a unit +2/+0 this round. If you've added 2 cards to your hand this round, give it elusive as well. So first off, it's only a temporary effect, so keep that in mind. Second off, I like it. You can kind of use it as it's kind of like PNZ's Sharp Sight, but it's more aggressive, if that makes sense. So you can use it on something that's like a big attune unit, like a ballistic bot, and win that way. So like, a big ballistic bot, maybe a Victor with a lot of keywords, and win that way. It's just having to get that second card, the 2+ cards into your hand, can be a little tough. And if you're not getting the elusive part of the card, it's kind of bad. Still, though, I like it in the right deck, so for that reason, I will give it 2 stars. I think it has a home, I think it does its job, and I think it does it decently, so 2 stars from me. Now then, I mentioned her a little bit earlier. We got Caitlyn, the PNZ champion, trap champion, whatever you want to call her. 3 mana, 3/3 quick attack. When she strikes, plant 2 flash bomb traps randomly in the top 10 of the enemy deck. The flash bombs, if you don't know what they do, they deal 1 to a random ally when they're drawn by your enemy. So, one of your enemy's stuff, not your own stuff. To level up Caitlyn, 5 traps have to have been activated. The only other trap in the game at the moment are puff caps. So if we ever get more traps in the game that do other things, Caitlyn just gets better and better. Quick note on that. What does Caitlyn do when she levels up, though? Well, now she strikes and deals. Now she only plants 4 flash bombs instead of 2 flash bombs, so that's nice, more flash bombs. And whenever she strikes, she deals damage to the enemy next equal to the number of traps activated this round. So she helps to close out the game. I like Caitlyn. Also, her champion spell is Piltover Peacemaker. 3 mana fast speed spell, deal 2 to an enemy, plant 2 flash bomb traps in the top 10 of the enemy deck. Pretty solid spell. Honestly, that spell alone is playable in decks, in my opinion. I like her. I think trying to level... I look at her kind of like Draven. I think trying to level her up is a little bit of a trap, no pun intended. And you shouldn't be trying to protect her too hard. Just, you play her down, she strikes, get some flash bombs in, get some nice tempo going. She dies. Don't go out of your way to keep her alive, etc., etc. And then you play the second Caitlyn who levels up, and then you finish the game, or you play your win con, whatever it is. That's how I like to play Caitlyn. The only problem I have with Caitlyn are the flash bomb traps, which is kind of, her whole thing. The problem is the flash bomb traps are just too RNG dependent, in my opinion. The fact that they can go anywhere in the top 10 is crazy random. In the very top of the 10 cards, you can get a really quick win easily and just high roll and get a win. They're in the bottom 10, you might lose the game because you might need the value. Even if you get the flash bombs, you might just miss and hit something on your opponent. The flash bomb might hit something on your opponent's side that doesn't matter. Plus, it gets countered by tough, so that's sad. Next thing, I guess, they can overkill something. So let's say your opponent has like a 1/1, and I don't know, let's say they have like 2 1/1s and they draw 2 flash bomb traps. Those flash bombs could technically both hit the same 1/1, even though it overkills. So that's a little bit bad. So while I like Caitlyn and all, just the heavy RNG is keeping me from giving her an extra star. So I'm only going to give her 4 stars. Still, though, solid champion. And with more and more traps being printed that have different effects, I do think she might get better and better. Anyway. Oh, speaking of traps, we got Karina. Another Karina card. The second one, I believe. Karina Mastermind. 6 mana, 5/5. When you play Karina, you get to choose between one of 2 things. Either plant 5 flash bombs in the top 5, or activate the effect of all traps in the top 5 of the enemy's deck. This card's a finisher. You play this card after you've put in a lot of puff caps in your opponent's deck, and you kill them with the puff caps. Or you clear their board with the flash bomb traps. That's it. I feel if you have to use Karina to put flash bombs into your opponent's deck, either something bad happened and you're losing the game, or maybe, I don't know, you have a second Karina in hand. So yeah, solid card, solid finisher. It comes down very early. 5/5 for 6 is a okay stat line too, so even if you don't kill your opponent with the Karina activation, she still fights well for the board, so pretty solid stat line. 4 stars from me because she does need a little help here by getting some traps in the opponent's deck. The RNG, in my opinion, is a little... I just never like cards with heavy RNG, which kind of is Karina. And while I said 6 mana for 5/5 worth of stats is fine, it's not amazing, and I kind of wish she had like some kind of extra keyword to make me like her even more. Anyway, though, still a good card. Very solid in the right deck, and definitely wins games. Next up, Coup de Grace. 5 mana fast spell. Place an enemy follower into the enemy deck, then your opponent draws 1. It's Will of Ionia, except it puts the card into your enemy's deck, which is good. Sure, your opponent gets to draw 1, so they're replacing the card anyway, so you're not really getting up a card, in all honesty. The only problem I have with this card, well, I have 2 problems with this card. One, 5 mana is really expensive. We've seen Will of Ionia at 5 mana. When it used to be 4 mana, they made it 5 mana, no one played it, and then they made it 4 mana again. It's just this kind of effect, bounce effects, are just too expensive at 5 mana. The other problem, and this is the bigger problem, it can only hit followers. Can't hit champions. Not being able to hit champions is way too restrictive. We've seen cards like this before, not specifically with this effect, but cards that can only hit followers and not hit champs. And they have a good effect, but not being able to hit champs just hurts them too much. A couple examples, in my opinion, are like Purify, which is the 2 mana Demacia spell, which silences a follower, compared to like Hush, which can silence champions. Also Whimsy, the 4 mana transform a follower into a 1/1 for that turn. Neither Purify nor Whimsy really see much play because, again, not being able to hit champions is too restrictive in my opinion. Anyway, for that reason, I'm going to give it 1 star. It's a good effect, and just Piltover and Zon doesn't really have this kind of effect like sure Ionia has in the form of Will, but sometimes you do want this effect in a Piltover and Zon control deck, and it does get around like last words, so there's that. So it has a home as a tech card, I think, in the right meta, but way too expensive in my opinion. But I think like being at fast speed does save it from being unplayable. Next up, Insider Knowledge. I like this card. 3 mana fast spell, both players draw 2. I both like this card and hate this card. I hate it because, well, I've died to it a bit. But Hexcore Foundry. Hexcore Foundry compared to Insider Knowledge. Insider Knowledge is much faster than Hexcore Foundry. Hexcore Foundry takes a little bit of time to get going and get up and running, but Hexcore Foundry does a lot more work than Insider Knowledge. However, that's where I think Insider Knowledge has the advantage. If the meta is fast and you want to play a deck where you want to force your opponent to draw, you play Insider Knowledge. So, like, let's say you want to play like a Caitlyn deck, a Teemo deck, whatever. But you also want to play Hexcore Foundry in your deck, but you know the meta's fast, so you'll play Insider Knowledge. Plus, there's some cute things you can do with flash bombs, and you can use Insider Knowledge to make your opponent draw and try and flash bomb their units during combat. That's really cute, but it's very RNG. Also, it's kind of hard to make your opponent overdraw because it is a fast spell. So your opponent could play their own spells in response if they have some. So there's also that. But still, very solid card in my opinion. Only really goes into a couple of decks, and it is a little meta dependent, but I think it's a solid 2 stars in my opinion. Anyway, next up. Speaking of card draw, Justice Rider. I like this card. I wish this card was a little bit better. 4 mana, 3/4. When your opponent draws, plant 1 Flash Bomb Trap randomly in the top 10 of the enemy deck. Extremely slow effect. Now, sure, with cards like, well, Insider Knowledge and Hexcore Foundry, and your opponent just drawing cards themselves, you get more and more Flash Bombs, but assuming no extra card draw, it's just 1 extra Flash Bomb in the top 10 per turn. That's extremely slow. The 3/4 stat line for 4 is not awful. That's like the premium stat line for a 3-drop, and this effect is pretty good for that 1 extra mana. So I like it. It's just way too dependent on the meta, way too slow, and just a little too RNG too because of the flash bombs. So I'm going to give it 1 star though. I think in a slower meta against a control deck, well, the problem is control decks don't play that many units anyway, so flash bombs against more control decks aren't even that good. But I think in a slower meta, this card can be good, because then you can also play Hexcore Foundry, use this along with Hexcore Foundry, make your opponent draw a lot, get hex scores going, etc., and just be really annoying. Next up, Most Wanted. I like this spell, even though it's garbage in my opinion. 5 mana slow spell, pick a player to discard their lowest cost card to draw 3. So you can make your opponent draw cards, or you can draw cards yourself. So that's nice. You can choose either you or your opponent. And you can get some discard synergy off that way. That's pretty cool. Discard something cheap that has fleeting, like an ignition from a ballistic bot. Try to force your opponent to draw cards that and get them to hit like puff caps and flash bombs. Pretty cute. Slow speed though. Slow speed, the bane of a lot of spells. Slow speed just hurts too much in my opinion for this card. 5 mana is a lot of mana too, but drawing 3 and the versatility does maybe save it from unplayability in my opinion, so I give it 1 star though. Not a big fan of this card, but I think it might find a home in the future. Speaking of that card, well, let's keep looking at the card. We got now Officer Squad, 5 mana 4/5. When he's summoned, you get a Most Wanted in hand. I like this card. I think this card is slow. I think this card is bad, but I like it. I like cards that give you extra value. This is a lot of value, though, but it's also a lot of mana. You get a 4/5 for 5, which is kind of mediocre. I want 4/5s for 4, in all honesty, but you're getting an extra card. That's nice. Little discard fodder. The card itself has some nice value, as we talked about already with Most Wanted. It's slow, though. It's way too slow. This card needs a slow meta. I don't know with this card. I really feel like if this guy had a keyword of some kind, I don't know even what kind, like, I don't know, tough, maybe like fearsome or something, just any kind of keyword, like attune maybe. Sure. But I just feel he's not bringing enough to the deck to make the deck of any kind of deck that I want him in, though. Still, though, in a slower meta, I could see myself playing a couple of these in the right deck. 4/5 is very sticky on the board, fights really well for the board, and then you can use Most Wanted to get a little extra card draw, so I like it. Big fan of this card, even though I don't think it's that great. Gonna give it 1 star because I do think it has potential, especially if the meta slows down. Now then, Piltover Peacemaker. We already talked about this card a little bit with Caitlyn. It's her champ spell. Deal 2 to an enemy, plant 2 flash bombs in the top 10. Solid card. Sure, it can't go face like Mystic Shot, but you're paying an extra 1 mana for a Mystic Shot that can't go face. But in exchange, you get to plant 2 flash bombs. I think you need, if you're going to play this card, you need to do one of 2 things. You either need to care about the flash bombs, or you're playing a deck that cares about 3 mana spells, aka a Tri-Beam deck. Without either of those, I don't think this card's playable. So I'm going to give this thing 2 stars. Solid card, goes into a couple of decks, but that's it. Not much to talk about here. Not really a hard to analyze card. Very, very nice card in general. Next up. Okay. I'm probably overrating this card. I love this card. Station Archivist. 3 mana, 3/3. Play the card. Pick a spell in the top 5 of your deck. Create an exact fleeting copy in hand. I love this card. The value on this card is through the roof. You can get things like extra time tricks for more card draw, extra mystic shots for more removal. If you're playing Fallen Feline, you might be able to even hit a Hexite Crystal. That's insane value. I love this card. I'm probably extremely overrating this card, but I do think this is one of the best PNZ cards in the set. Mid-range decks like it, tempo decks like it, control decks like it. The only deck that I assume doesn't like it is a aggro deck, but even honestly, I could see an aggro deck in the future playing this card for trying to get extra burn. So with that all said, I'm giving this card 5 whole stars. The value's crazy. 3 mana, 3/3, or 3/3 for 3 is a solid stat line. Great card overall. And, you know, we got Professor Von Yip there in the artwork too, so very cute as well. Next up. Sting Officer. 2 mana, 2/1 elusive. Nexus Strike, plant 2 flash bombs in the top 10. Okay, more flash bomb synergy. The only problem I have with this card is 1 health for a 2-drop. Sure, the elusive does save it from being bad. It's still very, very fragile. And for 2 mana, or just 2 mana cards with 1 health, need to be powerful, in my opinion, for me to justify playing it. So think like a Green Glade Duo is a very similar card. It's also a 2 mana, 2/1 elusive. That card just gets bigger and bigger as you play more units. This guy doesn't really do that, and instead he puts flash bombs, but I feel like he's going to get maybe 2 strikes at most. If you get 2 strikes with this guy, that's great. You got 4 damage to the Nexus and 4 flash bombs in their deck. If you only get 1 strike, meh. But I like him. Helps you start to get the flash bomb train rolling for Caitlyn, but even some Caitlyn decks might not like this, in all honesty. It's very meta dependent on how easy it is, I think, in the meta. Like how easy it is to kill a 1 health 2-drop in the the meta. So for that reason, 2 stars. Just a little too meta dependent for me, and even when he doesn't get killed, he's not the greatest, in all honesty. Next up, Stinky Wump. What a stinky boy. 1 mana, 2/1. Last breath. Create a copy of me in the enemy deck with 2 poison puff caps attached. Meh. 1 mana, 2/1 is nice for a 1-drop, like solid stat line for a 1-drop. It helps you get the puff cap count going for Teemo decks, but just meh, in my opinion. I feel like I like it as maybe like a 1 to a 2 of in a Teemo deck, just in case like I don't find a Teemo on turn 1. I have the backup that is Stinky Wump, but I'm not the biggest fan of this guy. So I'm going to give it 2 stars, though. I think it does have a home. And it does fill a niche of being an alternate 1-drop in a Teemo deck, but I'm not the biggest fan of this card. It does kind of mess with your opponent's draws too, sort of, kind of like Pesky Spectre does, but that's not really too much to talk about. And the last card. This card is a card I still have no idea how to rate, in all honesty. Sump Fumes. 3 mana fast spell, deal 2 to a unit. If you've added 2+ cards to your hand this round, deal 3 to it instead. First things first, 3 mana spell, Tri-Beam Synergy, just get that out of the way. If this was not in PNZ, I would like this card. The problem is, it is in PNZ. PNZ has so much damage-based removal that's cheap that I'm not a fan of this card. Between Mystic Shot, Get Excited, Gotcha, and, well, I guess we can also mention Piltover Peacemaker, and sort of Thermogenic Beam, PNZ has a lot of early game damage-based removal. So let's compare it to, like, let's look at Get Excited and Gotcha as the cards to compare this to, because Mystic Shot's OP and you're never cutting Mystic Shot for this. First off, can't go face. You can't hit Nexus with this. So Get Excited has that over this. I feel if you are somehow getting an extra card to your hand, you're either getting like fleeting copies of cards, like Ignition from Ballistic Bot, or you're drawing cards. If that's happening, I feel Get Excited is better, because Get Excited, you just discard the extra cards you're getting. I don't know. I just like Get Excited better than this. And then Gotcha, if you're not getting extra cards, then it's much harder to get that, add 2 cards to your hand this round kind of thing. So then you have Gotcha, which has some small synergy with something like Time Trick. So I don't like this card. I know some people like it in the right deck. I've seen some people trying it out with like Heimerdinger Tri-Beam decks, and it's looking cute, but in the current meta and at the moment with the current cards, I'm not a fan of it. But I think there is some potential here, and I do think it fills a small niche of decks that want 3 mana, deal 3 removal, but they don't want to play Get Excited or Gotcha. So I like it. I'll give it 2 stars. Anyway, what do we have next? We got Shadow Isles. We got a lot of cards here with Shadow Isles. We got a whole new archetype too. We have the Darkness archetype to look at later. But first off, let's start with this guy. The Buru Sentinel? I still don't know how to pronounce this word. 3 mana, 3/3. Fearsome. Solid stat line. Solid keyword. First time you slay a unit with a spell, he gets +2/+1. This is kind of a small thing they got going on here in Shadow Isles of slaying things with spells now with this latest set. If you activate him, he's a 3 mana 5/4. That's a solid stat line. For a 3-drop, 4 mana 5/4s are already good. So a 3 mana 5/4 is pretty solid, and then you have Fearsome on top of that. I like him. I don't think he's great, and the problem with this card is you have to activate him quickly, but the fact that it's a slay a unit, so you can use like a glimpse on your own unit to activate this guy, is pretty nice. So I like him. Only issue is I don't think he has a home in kind of any deck. I feel like control decks don't want him because they'd rather play more value-oriented cards, and tempo/aggro decks would rather just play cards that are more, well, tempo-based than this guy. So I'll give him 2 stars, though. He's got a solid stat line, solid keyword, and I can see maybe in the future some kind of spell slaying mid-rangey tempo deck can be a thing, because this guy is kind of hard to remove after he's active. Next up, Catalog of Regrets. The value is crazy with this card. 4 mana landmark. Round start, create in hand a fleeting copy of a non-fleeting spell you cast last round. This card is so slow. It does nothing the turn you play it, and then you have to cast spells, and then you get the fleeting copies. You don't get to choose the fleeting copies, so if you cast more than one spell, you gotta hope RNG favors you, and then you gotta recast those fleeting spells again. That's a huge mana investment. It's a huge time investment in that you need a lot of turns to get the value out of this. But if you somehow don't die after playing Catalog and live for another 5 or 6 turns, you're probably going to win. Because then you can start casting spells like Withering Whales and Go Hards and so on and so forth. But extremely slow, really, really dependent on the meta, but it does let you get a it lets you play a go hard deck without having to need a lot of card draw, if that makes sense, because you get more go hards by casting go hards with a catalog. So I think it has a solid niche to fill. Great value. 2 whole stars for me though. Little too slow, little too meta dependent, and of course the landmarks. So whenever landmarks do get too popular, everyone starts bringing out the landmark removal like Scorched Earth and stuff. Next, we got what? Dawning Shadow. 7 mana slow spell, kill an enemy, give all enemies -2 this -2 -0 this round. The problem is Vengeance. Vengeance exists. That's all I'll say about this. I think this card is fine as a one of in a Senna deck because Senna makes slow speed spells fast. Outside of that, this card is unplayable. So I give it 1 star because it's kind of cute as a one of in a Senna deck. This is also Senna's champ spell though, so really, really solid champ spell. But as a card by itself, I think it's garbage outside of Senna decks because I'd rather just play Vengeance. Next up, Demacian Sentinel. 1 mana fearsome, 1/2. First time you slay a unit, gets +2/+1, similar to the other Sentinel, the Buru Sentinel. I like this card. Can't be pinged down like Bark Beast can. Sure, Bark Beast doesn't see play, but very solid 1-drop, comes down early. If you get the slay off, 3/3 with fearsome beats down really, really hard. The only problem with this card is it's only good in the early game. It's kind of mediocre in the late game, so it's a terrible top deck in the late game. Also, you need to activate this fast. So what does that mean? Go hard? I like this for a go hard deck. Helps you get some chip damage in. You play this on 1. Your opponent plays like a 2/1 or something. You go hard, they're 2/1. You get a 3/3. Perfect. The issue is every other Demacian Sentinel in your deck also needs to see you slay a unit with a spell, so you have to keep doing it with every new Demacian Sentinel you summon, and that's a little tough, but it's a solid 1-drop. It's a 1-drop. You can't expect too much out of these things. I'm going to give it 3 whole stars. It does its job well. Good stat line for a 1-drop. Good keyword in the form of fearsome. Needs a little setup though, but it's not difficult to set up. Anyway, next up, Zenaton. First darkness card. 8 mana 7/6. When I'm summoned, create a darkness in hand. If you don't have one, your next darkness this round costs 0 and deals 2 to all enemies. Darkness is a 3 mana slow speed spell that deals 2 to a unit. So I like this card in darkness decks as like a 1 of, even a 2 of in slower metas. Again, we're talking, there's that word coming again, slow and meta. Very slow card, very meta dependent. Does clear the board against, well, pseudo clear the board against certain decks, swarmy based decks. It's just 8 mana. If Zenaton just had a keyword of some kind, I'd love Zenaton. Like if, I don't know, if they had tough or something, yeah, that would be great. Or even regeneration, I'd love it. Just a little too expensive for not enough value, in my opinion. You might say, like, oh, doesn't it help you against the aggro decks? Well, by turn 8, if you're not dying to the aggro deck by turn 8, you're probably winning, in all honesty, or stabilizing. Sure, this card is basically saying, like, okay, let's really stabilize now. And that's what Zenaton is. Still, though, I like it. I'll give it 2 stars. It's a solid, like, oh, hey, let's just make sure we really clear those mid-rangey decks boards when the late game starts to start stabilizing. Another problem is Shadow Isles has things that help do this already, like Withering Whale, Withering Mist, Box, etc., etc. So, yeah. Next up, Ishtali Sentinel. This card I like. 6 mana 4/5 lifesteal. When I'm summoned, create a darkness in hand. If you don't have one, when you play your next darkness this round, copy it targeting the enemy nexus. So, the whole darkness stuff, cool. Whatever. Darkness generator. That's great. It's a little chip damage on the enemy's nexus. The biggest thing about this card, in my opinion, is the stat line and the keyword. 4/5 for 6, kind of a mediocre stat line. but not that bad. Pretty 4-5 is a solid, sticky stat line, able to rumble in combat and get like maybe 2 blocks in before it dies. Lifesteal, though, is why I love this card. Lifesteal cards are very few and far between, it seems. And, well, this card is great. This is going to save your life against some aggro decks if you're a Darkness player. Solid card. It is a little slow. You do need a little bit of mana to cast the Darkness, but it's still solid in my opinion. I'm going to give it 3 stars. Comes down. It's annoying for any kind of aggro player. Gives you a Darkness if you don't have one. Very good card overall, but it doesn't feel insanely OP, so it's fine. Next up. This card's bad. Mistkeepers. 5 mana 3/4 each round the first time you slay a unit with a spell, summon an ephemeral Mistwraith. I can see this card as being some kind of like weird back row engine, but I don't think it's good enough. Maybe in the future, if there's like a spell slaying archetype, you can use this and get like some extra chip damage coming through, but I don't know. 3/4 for 5 is really expensive. This ability is slow too. It's limited to once a turn as well, so I'm not a fan of it. But I can see maybe a little bit of potential, but I think this is solidly just a meme of a card. So I'm giving it 0 stars. Sorry. Next up, Piercing Darkness. Not much to talk about with this spell. 6 mana slow spell, drain 5 from a unit. That's it. Nothing else there. Fine card. That's it. It's just fine. Just 6 mana for 5 damage that heals you for 5 if it actually connects. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to talk about here. It's a big health swing. You get 5 health if your opponent doesn't like stop this spell somehow with like a glimpse or a barrier or whatever, which those will stop your life gain. And plus there's a little synergy with Senna, who we'll see soon. But yeah, I like it as like a 1 to 2 of in the right deck. The issue is it is a lot of health, but Shadow Isles kind of has healing. Like a decent amount of healing. Sure, I don't think any of Shadow Isles' healing heals this much, but meh. The way I look at this is it's kind of like a slow speed vengeance, because 5 damage does kill a lot of things, but not everything. So I'll give it 2 stars though. It's fine as like a 1 to a 2 of in the right deck in a Shadow Isles control-y deck, but meh. Anyway, Senna, we've mentioned her a couple of times already. Senna is a 5 mana 4/4 quick attack. When I'm summoned or attacked, create a Darkness in hand if you don't have one. Your damage and kill spells accelerate to fast. That last sentence is why Senna is great. To level up Senna, she needs to see you slay 3 units with spells, or have an allied Lucian die, but here's the thing, Senna doesn't really go with Lucian. Maybe in the future, though, we'll get like another form of Lucian that goes more with like Senna. Who knows? And when Senna levels up, pretty much the same exact card, except now she's a 5/5 for 5, and she discounts your fast spells by 1. Champion spell is a Dawning Shadow as well. We already talked about that. Great card. The only problem with Senna is she is a little fragile. 4/4 for 5 is extremely fragile. She, thanks to quick attack, she does attack well, but you're going to be playing Senna in a control deck. Even if you're not a darkness focused deck, you're a control deck. You want to be making your slow speed spells fast speed, you're control. And you want to block. Senna does not block well. So I like her. I think she's good. I feel like the more and more cards are in the games, the better and better Senna gets. But for now, I think she's a little meh, especially in the Darkness archetype, which is kind of meh in my opinion. But I'll give her 5 stars. Now, changing the speed of your spells is really strong in my opinion. Plus, you got the cute thing where you can put like, you can cast a Darkness at fast speed, put it on the stack, and then attack in with Senna. And then Senna, then you confirm your attack, the Darkness resolve, and you'll get a Darkness right away. So that's a cute thing you can do. So yeah, I like her. I think there is definitely some non-darkness based control decks that can play her and just use like the generated darknesses for extra value while making other spells fast. Only damage and kill spells though, so there is a little bit of a limitation. Next up, another darkness card. Solari Sentinel. 3 mana, 3/2. Okay. When I'm summoned, create a darkness in hand. If you don't have one, that's it. This card is fine. It's kind of mediocre. No keywords or anything. Just makes a darkness. That's it. So, pretty much gonna just go in a darkness deck if you really need another. If you really need some filler for your 3-drop slot, but I think besides this card, you have enough darkness generators between this and I believe the next card we'll see, which is Vagar, and some other cards too. So I don't think you even need to play this in a darkness deck. Maybe as a 1 or 2 of if you just want a little extra units that generate darkness. But being limited to only 1 darkness in hand kind of makes a card like this meh, in my opinion. I'll give it 2 stars though. I do think it's fine. I think you can play it, but I think there's just better cards for a darkness deck anyway. It's a very fringe playable card, to put it lightly. Now then, another Shadow Isle card. Shadow Isle Champion. A multi-region champion too. Bandle City Shadow Isles. We got Vagar. Darkness Boy. Darkness Synergy. Darkness Champion. Whatever you want to call him. 4 mana, 1/4. Terrible, terrible stats for the cost. Very fragile. When I'm summoned, create a darkness in hand if you don't have one. Okay, pretty standard darkness generator. Round start, grant your darkness everywhere 1 extra damage. That is the sentence. That sentence is why Vagar is good. You have to make your darkness deal damage because 3 mana slow speed, deal 2 damage is awful. If your darknesses get buffed once and are dealing 3 for 3 damage, then you're actually, well, happy. And once they get to 4 and beyond, then you're really, really happy. And your opponent's probably sad because you're probably winning. To level up Vagar, you have to have dealt 12 damage with darkness. Okay, what does he do when he levels up? He does a lot when he levels up. Also, he doesn't have to see you deal the damage with darkness, so that's a added positive. So, when Vagar levels up, now he also gives you a darkness at the start of the round if you don't have one, so that's pretty nice. And he still gives you the +1 damage to your darkness everywhere. That's also pretty good. Darkness can now target anything. So, Nexus. He will be your finisher. You will use darkness and you will go face with Ishtali Sentinel, the Solari. As well, you can play like an Ishtali Sentinel, have a level of Vagar, target face, and then the Ishtali Sentinel will also target face. You get a lot of damage. So this will win games quickly, which he kind of has to do because, in all honesty, darkness decks, while they're control decks, they get out-controlled by other control decks. Champ spell is Event Horizon, solid control card, 5 mana fast speed spell, stun an enemy, then stun all enemies with 2 or less power. Little mediocre as a card itself, but solid champ spell, slows down the enemy, slows down their stuff, buys you an extra turn or 2. Very good card. So, what do I think of Vagar? Well, I said this already when we were looking at level 1 Vagar. He's just so fragile. If he only had like an extra point of health or a defensive keyword like tough or something, maybe even regeneration, I'd like him. But he just doesn't have it. Maybe if he had tough when he leveled up, sure, because, you know, he hops in a mech, so it's kind of flavorful. But he's just so fragile. He's so slow. I love him. I think he's good, but I think he needs a little extra help. I'm giving him 4 stars. But he has a fun card to play, so 4 stars for me. Next up, what do we have? Oh, I'm sorry. We're ending Shadow Isles with a pretty bad card now. Watcher on the Isles. 4 mana, 2/4. Each round the next time, or the first time you slay a unit with a spell, deal 2 to the enemy in excess. This card is trash. I'm sorry. I don't know why you would play this card. You might be like, oh, what if I want to play it in some kind of burn deck? Well, here's the problem. Shadow Isles has enough of these, like, backline burn cards. Basically, Phantom Prankster and Neverglade Collector are similar to this card and just better because they don't have to see you slay anything with spells. They just need to see things die, in other words, which is much easier to do than what this guy is doing. And the 2/4 stat line for 4 is awful. So yeah, I don't know. Also, unlike Neverglade Collector and Phantom Prankster, who can activate multiple times a turn, this guy can only activate once a turn. And you might say, well, he does more damage than those two. Sure, but it's only one more point of damage. And again, he can only activate once per turn. So, not a fan of this guy. I really think he's garbage. I think no deck wants him. Any kind of like burn deck doesn't want him. Control obviously doesn't want him. So 0 stars for me. Now then, next region, Shurima. We got a few cards here to talk about. We got, first off, a lot of cards. We got a lot more landmarks. We got some cool stuff here. But first off, we got Construct of Desolation. 1 mana burst spell, create a Ruinous Acolyte or an Obelisk of Power in hand. These are also cards you can play in your deck as well. Ruinous Acolyte is a 2 mana 2/1 fearsome. Play, destroy an allied landmark to grant allied Ruinous Acolytes everywhere, +1/+1. So it buffs itself as well. Obelisk of Power is a 1 mana landmark with countdown 3, or when I'm summoned or destroyed, grant an ally, or the strongest ally, +2/+0. So it's giving you +4/+0 in total. I don't like this card. I think this card is bad. I do think there is potential here in maybe a Ruinous Acolyte deck as extra copies of Ruinous Acolyte, and it does give you, if you really need it, Obelisk of Power for some landmark destruction fodder, because this is an archetype now, destroying landmarks. I just don't think that kind of archetype is good. But I can see potential in the future with this, so I'll give it 1 star. Like, all you have to do is buff Ruinous Acolyte twice, and then you have a 2 mana 4/3 fearsome, which is pretty solid. Next up. Oh, now this card's good. Endless Devout. 3 mana 3/3, Last Breath, summon a Sarcophagus. Sarcophagus, 1 mana landmark. Countdown 3 or when I'm destroyed, summon a Restored Devout. Restored Devout, 1 mana 5/3 fearsome. Very simple card there. Very good card. 3 mana 3/3 with no keyword is a little bit bad, but between cards like Roiling Sands and Vulnerable Givers, it's really easy for this card to die. You can also use it as, like, I guess, sacrifice fodder for rights as well, like Rite of Negation or something, Rite of Calling, whatever. And the Sarcophagus, you just destroy it as well for some more landmark destruction synergy, and then you get a 5/3. Really solid card overall. Very, very good for your landmark destruction decks. It comes down, slows your opponent down. It's just a very annoying card for your opponent to deal with. As long as Equinox is not too heavily played, the card is solid. So I give it 3 stars. Very solid card. Next up, Herald of the Magus. 5 mana 4/4. When I'm summoned, if you've destroyed 4+ allied landmarks this game, grant your champions everywhere +2/+2 and Overwhelm. So first off, I'll say it. Yeah, you can play it with like Aram, Howling Abyss. That's cute, but that's a meme. But let's take this card more seriously. This card's good. +2/+2 and Overwhelm. So landmark champions. So some of the new ones, Ziggs, Talia, Malphite, all love getting Overwhelm. And a lot of champions that are landmark, not like heavily landmark synergy based, but have something to do with landmarks that you can play in a landmark destruction deck. So like Action, Zillion, we'll see him later, Zareth as well. He's very heavily landmark synergy based. Sure, they don't care too much about getting Overwhelmed, but that +2/+2 stats is just nice, makes your champions a little bit more survivable, giving more stats to Zillion, for example, making Zillion a 3/6, makes him so hard to get rid of. Very nice card. Very slow is the issue. 5 mana 4/4 is awful for a 5-drop, and it doesn't have any kind of keywords, so you need to buy a couple more turns after you summon this. So big tempo hit for a big reward later on. So I'm going to give it 2 stars, though. I like it as like a 2 of in the right deck. Next up, Obelisk of Power. We already talked about this a little bit when we were talking about Construct of Desolation. I don't like this card. I think this card is bad. I feel like you should never play this in your deck, and the only reason you should see it is either it was randomly generated from some other random card, or I don't know, maybe your opponent's playing like Construct of Desolation and they need a landmark to destroy. But I don't think this card is good. I think there are more than enough landmarks that work as good destruction fodder. I give it 0 stars. Next card. Oh, speaking about landmarks that get destroyed, we have Risen Altar. 6 mana landmark, countdown 3 or when I'm destroyed. Summon a, I'm going to butcher this name, Damian the Unbound. Damian the Unbound is a 7 mana 7/6 with Overwhelm and Spell Shield. It's a bigger Ruin Runner. It's also a slower Ruin Runner because you have to play the landmark and then you have to either wait the 3 turns or destroy the landmark, which it's not that tough, but it takes some time. So very slow, very, very slow, but I like this as a one-of in landmark destruction decks because a 7/6 with Overwhelm and Spell Shield is really annoying. It closes out games fast. And again, like we've all seen from Ruin Runner, the Overwhelm Spell Shield keyword combination's extremely annoying. Still, though, it's really slow, very meta dependent. I'm going to give it 1 star. Oh, now this card here, Rite of the Arcane. This is how we destroy our landmarks. 3 mana slow spell. Destroy an allied landmark or one of your mana gems, like all the other rights, to deal 4 damage to an enemy unit. So you can hit champions. So that's pretty solid. So this is how we're going to destroy all of these countdown landmarks that want to be destroyed. We're getting to kill something as well that's important, like a back row champion that's never fighting in combat, or just a hard to kill champion in combat, like say Draven or something. Very, very solid card. It's also Xerath's champion spell, who we'll talk about more. Very great card. I'm only going to give it 3 stars, though. I might be underrating this card a little bit, but I'm only giving it 3 stars because sure, you can use it without landmarks, but I feel like if you're destroying a mana gem to play this, that's kind of bad, not just because you're destroying a mana gem, but also because you're sort of throwing away a way to destroy your landmarks, which, well, you want to do. Anyway, next up. Oh, Ruinous Acolyte. I already talked about this guy. This guy, I could see in the future a deck with this guy being played. If you get 1 buff to this guy, a 2 mana 3/2 fearsome is fine. It's a cheap way to destroy landmarks as well. I assume you can play it without destroying a landmark. So let's say you have no landmark, you can just play it and it doesn't get +1/+1. Kind of like how Spirit Leech can be played even if you have no units on the board. That's just a vanilla 4/1. I assume you could do that with this guy as well. But if you're able to continuously generate more acolytes and landmarks for the acolytes to destroy and get some landmark destruction synergy, I could see like a weird Ruinous Acolyte go very wide/tall deck appearing. So I see some potential with this card, but I don't think a deck with this card is coming together anytime soon unless we get new cards. I'll give it 1 star for the potential it has, but meh. Next up, Sandseer. 5 mana 5/4 fearsome. Okay, solid stat line. It's not the worst and a decent keyword. I like it. Play, draw 1. If you drew a landmark, repeat this effect. Most of the time, this is just a 5 mana 5/4 play, draw 1, which is fine. Let's look at it without the extra sentence. 5 mana 5/4 fearsome, play, draw 1. That is solid in my opinion. If you get a second card, this card is nuts. Now, you can also say like, well, you could even try and go and manipulate your draws with cards like Predict to make sure you guarantee a second draw. That's very cute, don't get me wrong, but that's a lot of work for not a lot of payoff. So you could be like, oh, I'll wait till turn 7 to play like a 2 mana Predict card like Zillion or the 2 mana 2/3 time guy, Chronomancer. And then play this to draw 2. Sure. Yeah, sure. But I'd rather just play this on 5, draw 1, cycle through the deck, get a 5/4 fearsome on the field, and help to help fight for the board. Still though, I like the card. The issue is, again, like I said, it's most of the time just going to draw one. It's really slow. It's very meta dependent on how fast the meta is. I'm going to give it 2 stars, though, especially if the meta slows down. This is a very solid card. So it's cute. I like it. Next up, what do we have here? We have Servitude of Desolation. 7 mana burst speed spell. Summon a stasis statue to store all allied units and landmarks that died or were destroyed this round. Stasis statue is the thing that pops out from Ancient Hourglass. I like this card. It's expensive, but it does a lot. This card can win games. Let's say like your opponent's like, okay, I'm going to clear the board with like Avalanche or Ruination or Box or whatever. And you're like, cool, you cleared my board. Let me play Servitude of Desolation. And it's like, okay, I basically countered your board clear. And then the statue pops and everything comes back. You do have to be a little careful against certain regions, though, like Noxus decks because of Scorched Earth. And they can basically counter your 7 mana spell with a cheap spell like Scorched Earth. But I like this in the right meta that's slower, that's meta playing board clears as like a pseudo anti-board clear card, like an anti-ruination card, as like a 1 or even a 2 of in the right deck. But the meta at the moment's really fast. I don't think you can fit this in a deck right now because it doesn't do much. It's kind of hard to set up. And it's a little tough to get enough value from it. So I'm going to give it 1 star. I do think there's some potential. And I think you could put this as a 1 of in the deck as like a nice like top end, like no you, I win the game now kind of card. Next up, what do we have? Unleashed Energy. I like this card. 3 mana burst speed spell. Give an ally +2/+1 this round, or destroy an allied landmark to give an ally +4/+2 this round. Terrible card if you're not destroying a landmark. If you are destroying a landmark, then it's good. 3 mana to give +4/+2. That's 6 stats for 3 mana. That's insanely good for 3 mana. Sure, not that much health for 3 mana, but that's fine. Lets you push in a lot of damage. Lets you get your destroying landmark synergies going off. Solid card. And it is a way to destroy landmarks at burst speed to get like some burst speed landmark destruction synergy going. I like it as like a 2 of in certain decks, but I'm not the biggest fan of this card because it is a little expensive, and even if you are destroying a landmark, it's only 2 health. It's not that great, so I'll give it 1 star only. Just not enough in my opinion. In the future, I think if we get even more good landmarks that want to be destroyed, I could see myself bumping this up to 2 stars, but I think we have enough ways to destroy landmarks that this card is only going to get played as like a 1 of to a 2 of. What do we have next? Wastewalker. I like this card. I'm probably overrating this card in all honesty. 3 mana 3/3 Overwhelm. When an allied landmark is destroyed, grant me +1/+1. Okay, very simple card here. Every time he sees an allied landmark get destroyed, he gets +1/+1. So he gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Thanks to Overwhelm, he actually can do something with all those stats. He kills your opponent, basically. I like it. I mean, there's not much here, in my opinion, to say. It's just like it comes down quickly, and it grows. The only problem is Endless Devout fights for the 3 mana slot, so there's that. It does take a little bit of setup too, unless you're playing some like spells or landmark destruction cards like the Rite of the Arcane or Unleashed Energy. Still though, I'm gonna give this thing 4 stars though. Very annoying card. Once it starts to grow and grow, it gets harder and harder to remove, especially if silences aren't popular in the meta. But for all those weaknesses I said, the setup, the weaknesses to silences, does keep it from getting the 5th star in my opinion. Now then, I've talked about this guy a few times. Xerath. He is an Ascended, so he has a level 3 form. But let's talk about level 1 and 2 first. Also, his champion spell is Rite of the Arcane. We already talked about that. Solid champion spell. Not just a solid spell, or solid champion spell, solid spell in general. I'm probably underrating this guy in all honesty, but I have my issues with Xerath. 4 mana 3/3. When an allied landmark is destroyed, deal 1 to the weakest enemy. Level up, you've destroyed 4 allied landmarks this game. Pretty easy to level him up. He doesn't have to see those landmarks get destroyed. What does he do when he levels up? Pretty much the same thing he did before, but now he deals 3 instead of 1 to the weakest enemy. Okay. Before we talk too much about Xerath, let's mention his level 3 form, his Ascended form, his Sun Disc form. So, restore the Sun Disc like every Ascended. He becomes a 4 mana 5/9 that says, at the start of the round, deal 5 to the weakest enemy and the enemy nexus. So that's a very fast clock. And then if an enemy unit would die, obliterate instead, stopping things like Last Breath, Rekindlers, etc., etc. I'm sorry about this, but I'm probably underrating Xerath. I love Xerath, okay? Let's just say that before I go too hard onto our poor energy boy. He is probably one of my favorite champions of this set. I know I've said that for a few of the champions, but he is one of my favorite champions for this set. He's just so fragile. A 3/3 for 4, and he doesn't have a keyword? That's just not that much. And yeah, if he levels up, he's a 4/4 for 4. But that's what I'm expecting my 4-drop to be before they level up. And I'm expecting them to have a keyword as well. This guy doesn't have a keyword. Maybe, here's the thing. If he had an extra point of health, not even an extra point of attack, if he had an extra point of health, so, it was a 3/4 and then a 4/5, or if he had a keyword like, say, tough, I always go to tough, but tough or regeneration, I doubt it doesn't make sense thematically, but lifesteal, I'd love him a lot more. He's just so fragile. He's never attacking, which that's fine. He's a backline champ, but I don't know. Even as a 2/4 into what, a 3/5, I'd love him so much more. But I don't know. Yeah, I get it. He's supposed to sit in the back line and snipe things. He's very thematic to his league counterpart, who is basically an artillery cannon, artillery mage, whatever, and he just sits in the back and just shoots stuff, which I mean, I don't know, thematic win. That's cool. Yeah, you got that down. But I just think he's so easy to kill. I've had some Xeraths in hand, and I've had landmarks that are getting destroyed, and I wouldn't even play my Xerath as a 4 mana 3/3 because I'd be like, anything will kill him here. A strong gust of wind will kill him. So for that reason, I love him. I really love him. I think he is a solid champ. I'm giving him 2 stars. He has to go with landmark destruction decks. He's very fragile. He's very slow. He only pings the weakest thing. But I could see myself giving him 4 stars in the future if he gets even a slight buff. I'm probably being a little too hard on Xerath. He probably is more of a 3-star champ than a 2-star champ, but I just think he's a little too fragile for me to like him too much. Now then, I believe we have another champion coming up. Yeah, we got Ziggs, multi-region champion, Bandle City Shurima card. Ziggs is a 3 mana 3/4. Poor Xerath. Oh, poor Xerath. But Ziggs is a 3 mana 3/4 who, when he attacks, he deals 1 to his blocker and the enemy nexus. Kind of like a mini misfortune effect here. To level him up, same way to level up Xerath. Just destroy 4 allied landmarks, and that's it. Funny thing is, Ziggs kind of doesn't really like to be in the Xerath decks, because Xerath is more of a control card, Ziggs is more of an aggressive card, so Ziggs kind of likes to pair up with Talia instead. What does he do, though, when he levels up? Well, when he levels up, now he deals 2 to the enemy blocker and the enemy nexus instead of 1. And when an allied landmark is destroyed, deal 2 to the enemy nexus. So he burns stuff. And then his champion spell is Bouncing Bomb, which is a 3 mana slow speed spell. Deal 2 to an enemy or deal 1 to 2 enemies. Nice versatile spell there. Pretty solid card overall, very aggressive. If you can level him up, he just ends games really quickly. If you can give him Overwhelm with that Herald of the Magus card, it's very, very scary, in fact. So yeah, I think Ziggs is a solid card. I don't know. He just feels solid. Like I don't look at Ziggs and I'm like, wow, this is OP. I don't look at him and I'm looking at him and I'm like, nothing's crazy good about him, but he just feels solid. Like a very good aggressive card in my opinion. I'll give him a whole 3 stars for that. Like, that's not bad, but my champions are kind of the cards I want to be the busted card. Sure, he's a 3-mana champion, but you know, what else is a 3-mana champion that's really good? Draven. And I know Draven's like one of the best champs in the game, but still, like, I don't know. Kind of hard for him to do too much, but he does get in like 1 attack usually before he dies because his stat line is like really good for a 3 jump, but whatever. Anyway, let's go to our next region before Bandle City. We got Targon. Or Targon. They only got 1 card. 2 if we include multi-region cards, but we're only going to look at 1 card for now. That's Battle Bonds. We're not going to stay here too long. Battle Bonds is trash. I'm sorry. 4 mana slow speed spell, grant 2 allies +2/+2. Meh. Maybe in a like deck with challengers or elusives or lifesteal units and giving them a permanent buff. But there's Blessing of Targon, which does something similar. But it is a lot of stats for 4 mana, but slow speed spell speed hurts it way too much. So 0 stars from me. And that's all for Targon. Like I said, we have a multi-region card, but I believe it is in Bandle City where I categorized it. And to finish off today's video, let's go to Bandle City. Long video. These videos are always long now. Bandle City, the new region, and we got a new card that's insanely good here. Aloof Travelers. 4 mana, 3/4. Also, I'm not going to really mention the Yordle tag too much anymore because I've said it once, I've said it a million times. Remember, just if you see the Yordle tag, just always keep in the back of your mind, like, Yordle synergy in the future, maybe. But 4 mana, 3/4. When I'm summoned, both players draw 1, then your opponent discards their highest cost card. Yeah, solid card. Very powerful. You're up a card from your opponent because you draw a card, and so does your opponent, but they have to discard it, so you're already up a card. Solid stat line for a 4-drop. Hand disruption, sort of. You will hold this card sometimes if you don't need the body on board and try to play it a turn before your opponent plays a really important card. Like, for example, play it on turn 6 against a Scion deck before they can play Scion. Turn 9 against an Aurelion Soul deck before they can play Aurelion Soul, etc., etc. Play it, well, I guess you would play it on turn 4 against like a Lee Sin deck to prevent them from being able to play Lee Sin. So, solid card. It's also a summon ability, not a play ability, so there's also some cute memes you can do by basically flickering it with like chroniclers and stuff, so there's that too. So cute card. 4 whole stars for me. Little slow of a card, and it does help out your opponent sort of, even though they're still going to be down a card compared to you. It does help them go and cycle through their deck, so that's the only reason it only gets 4 instead of 5 stars for me. Next up, Arena Kingpin. 3 mana, 4/2, quick attack. Noxus Bandle City multi-region card. The card is bad, but I think it's a fine card because of the multi-region synergy it has between things like Mayor and Bandle City, who we'll look at in the future. And because of multi-region synergy, I will give this guy 2 stars. And like I said I wouldn't mention it too much, but Yordle tag, so maybe Yordle synergy in the future. Next up, though, Ava Achiever. 6 mana, 4/4. When I'm summoned and round end, plant 3 poison puff caps on random cards in the enemy deck. Traps on enemy cards are doubled when activated. Card's just too fragile. It's slow and it's fragile. Very meta dependent card. Doesn't go into too many decks. But, and the other thing is like Karina also kind of fights for the 6-mana slot. And Karina just goes so much faster. Just you play Karina, you activate all the puff caps. And again, Karina doesn't actually take up the traps in the deck. She just activates them. I feel like Karina's just better in pretty much any trap deck, unless for some reason you're a non-PNZ trap deck, which is kind of weird, but I could see that happening in the future. So I'm going to give Ava 1 star. Really slow, really, really fragile for a 6-drop. But I could see maybe in the future this card getting played as a 2 of. Anyway, what do we have next? Babbling Balladeers. 3 mana 2/4. Okay, stat line for a 3-drop. When I'm summoned, create a Hungry Owlcat in hand. Hungry Owlcat is a 1 mana 2/1 spell shield, multi-region card, Ionia, Bandle City. Solid card. The issue is there are so many better cards to be played for 3 mana. I think this is a case of a decent card being pushed out by actually good cards, so I will give this guy only 1 star. If the Balladeers was multi-region, I might be tempted to give this a 2nd star. Like, I don't even know what 2nd region, but 2nd region in general, I could give this guy a 2nd star because multi-region synergies, but it's not. It's only Bandle City, so 1 star from me. Now, we've been talking about multi-region synergies, and here's one of them. Bandle City Mayor. 3 mana 2/2. Very, very fragile for a 3-drop. Your multi-region units cost 1 less. Okay, that's a really good thing. But we've seen cards like this in the form of Herald of Dragons, a 2 mana 1/1 that makes your dragons cost 1 less. That card doesn't see play. Bandle City Mayor, compared to Herald, first off, doesn't get pinged down by things like Vile Feast and other pings. Secondly, the other line of text. When you play Bandle City Mayor, he manifests a multi-region follower. So he will replace himself on summon. So sure, dies to Mystic Shot. If you Mystic Shot Bandle City Mayor, you're still down a card because they replaced the Mayor with a different card. And again, like I said, you're down a card. And then that's probably the best case scenario. Let's say you don't Mystic Shot or kill the Bandle City Mayor. Then your opponent's gonna go off and start just blasting out cards, vomiting out their hand and throwing out all kinds of cards from their hand. A card from Hearthstone that's very similar to this guy is Mech Warper, the 2 mana 2/3 that said your mechs cost 1 less while it was out. This guy is basically like that, except it also replaces itself and gives you a card. So I think this card is nuts. Plus, it's not even limited to multi-region followers. This also hits champions. So a lot of those Yordle champions that were already in the game but are now multi-region, so like, Fizz and Teemo and other things, get some synergy with this guy. So like Fizz will be 0 mana, Teemo is 0 mana, Poppy is cheaper, Lulu's now cheaper, etc., etc. This guy is nuts. And the defense for people saying he's not that good is dies to removal, which of course, yeah, everything dies to removal, but even if he dies to removal, you got some value. I'd say like in an Avalanche meta, he's not as great, but we don't see Avalanche too much anymore. 5 stars for me. This guy does it all. He gives you a card, gives you some great mana acceleration, and he's just annoying in general with how good he is. So yeah, 5 stars. Next up though, Bandle Commando. 2 mana 1/2 elusive, Nexus Strike, create a Hungry Owlcat in hand. We already know what the Owlcat is. This card's good. Unlike a lot of the other 2 mana elusives we've seen, this thing has 2 health. So sure, it's not hitting as hard as say like the Sting Officer or whatever it's called in PNZ, but it is a lot more tanky. And unlike the Sting Officer, this card helps you fight for the board. Well, I guess you can argue Sting Officer does that too with flash bombs, but this gives you actual units. And in combination with the Mayor, that Owl Cat is 0 mana. So great card, insanely good value. You get buffs on it, then it becomes an actually scary card. If you give it just +1/+1, it's now a 2/3 with elusive. Extremely scary. Kind of easy to give it +1/+1. Combine it with Lulu, you get like a 4/4 elusive. Very scary card in general. Gonna give it 4 stars though, because it is a little slow. It's a little fragile. And if your opponent plays an elusive, it's not actually going to get to attack, and it needs to continuously attack. Also, quick note, this card's really annoying for Zoe players, I'd say, because 1/2 elusives are really annoying for Zoe decks in general. Next up, this card. We don't have to talk too much about this card. This card's bad. Vandal Gunners. 8 mana, 7/7 spell shield. When I'm summoned, if you've summoned units from 4+ regions this game, impact 4. Gets impact 4. Yeah, this card's too expensive. If you need a late game finisher, there's so many better cards you can play besides this. I don't see why you would play this. Sure, the stat line is good and spell shield's nice, so it's hard to remove, but I just feel like there's so many better cards to play. I don't see why you would ever play this card unless you get it randomly generated from some other card. So I'll give it 0 stars. Next up, Vandal Painter. 3 mana, 2/3. Augment. Play, discard a card to create a multi-region follower in hand. I like this card. I don't think it's good though, but I like it because I like cards that let you get rid of cards in your hand that are kind of bad for that matchup or at that point in the game to get some other card. So like Spacey Sketcher. The issue with this card is compared to like say Spacey Sketcher, you don't really get a choice. Spacey Sketcher shows you 3 choices. This card doesn't really show you any choices. Sure, compared to Spacey Sketcher, it is a little bit better in terms of a stat line. 3 mana, 2/3 is already not great, but the augment helps it out. I just don't like that sometimes you might just get a dud from the multi-region follower. You might get like a really cheap, crappy card like Protoporo or a really expensive card that's useless for you. So yeah, lack of choices is the reason I'm not going to give this thing too high of a rating, and a little too RNG for me. But I like the card. 1 star from me, though. I think it might be playable in the future. Next up, though, I've mentioned this card a little bit already. Bandletree. The Bandletree. 5 mana landmark, round start, create a follower from a new region in hand. Win the game if you've summoned units from 10 regions. This counts retroactively, so it doesn't actually have to see you summon those units from the regions. Let's say you play this card and you've already summoned units from 5 regions. It's already halfway to a win. This card's nuts. This card is so good. You put this card in a swarm deck with like Mayors and Lulus and Poppies or Fizz and whatever, and this card just wins the game. You might just win the game automatically by just swarming your opponent and attacking over and over. If it doesn't, then you play Bandletree. If you somehow just have not played enough units, then the Bandletree itself will give you more and more cards to get the wins. And because it's a landmark, similar to Star Springs, which also has an alternate win con landmark, it's really tough to remove. So, like Scorched Earth removes it, sure, and I guess Desert Naturalist is probably the second best way to remove landmarks in the game at the moment. You can argue Aftershock's good too, I guess, but it's a really good deck. I honestly could see this card getting nerfed. And because it's like you can't increase the amount of regions, because there's 10 regions, the only way, in my opinion, to actually nerf this card is just increase its mana cost, because in my opinion, any other kind of nerf would kill the card. But yeah, solid card. I'm giving it 5 whole stars. It's an alternate win con. It gives you extra gas too. And it's really hard to remove. So 5 whole stars for me. I honestly could see this card getting nerfed. It's really annoying. Next up, we got Benemone, the first prank card, I believe, too. 4 mana, 4/3. When I'm summoned, create 2 pranks in hand. No kind of keyword or anything. Pranks are 1 mana focus speed spells that say pick one of 2 non-champs in the enemy's hand or deck and prank it. The game decides which of the cards to show you. Pranks are debuffs you give to enemy cards, so you can see them and it will show you the kind of debuff it will give. So like it costs extra mana. Units might might have less health, they might have vulnerable, might not be able to block, etc., etc. The issue with this card is, sure, pranks give you some information about what's in your opponent's hand. I think this card's just not enough for a 4-drop. Like, maybe if it was a 3/4, sure, but a 4 mana 4/3 is so bad in terms of stats. So I'm only going to give this 1 star. Maybe if it had like a tune or something, I'd like it a little more, but I don't know. It does give you a lot of pranks though, so you can save the pranks because they're not fleeting cards. You can save them and play them later and try and get more value that way by comboing them with other cards, but that's a lot of work. Next up, Bomber Twins. 2 mana 3/2, multi-region card. When I'm summoned, create a landmark, a random landmark that costs 2 or less in hand. Solid card. Very solid card. Pretty much just here for the Bandletree decks. I don't think landmark decks like this too much because there's just too much variance. But 2 mana 3/2 is a solid stat line, and it is a multi-region card, so it helps out with Bandletree cards, or Bandletree decks. So I'll give it a nice solid 2 stars. Very fine. And sometimes you get a good landmark anyway for your Bandletree deck, like, I don't know, Star Tip Peak or Preservarium or, I don't know, the Ancient Preparations or whatever. So I like it. Next up, what do we have? Bouncing Bomb. We talked about this a little bit with Ziggs already. 3 mana spell, slow spell, deal 2 to an enemy and deal 1 to 2 enemies. Or deal 1. If it was both, it would be crazy. Tri-beam decks like it, but the slow speed is what keeps it from being too good. If it was fast speed, sure, it'd be a little bit better, but slow speed just keeps this card from being too good. I'm sorry. I like the card, but I really wish it was fast speed. Yeah, I feel like it would be fine at fast speed, but it's already good enough at slow, so I can see why it's not fast speed. So I'll give it 1 star. It's fine. It's got some tri-beam synergy. It's also decent because Bandle City doesn't have too much good, cheap removal, so it helps them out as well. So 1 star from me, though, because there's just a little too much not working out for the card. What do we have next? Oh, speaking about cheap removal, Buster Shot. 4 mana slow spell. Costs 2 less if you have a Tristana, or if you've cast or summoned 4 cards from 4+ regions this game, deal 3 damage to a unit. So it can hit champions. 4 mana deal 3 is bad. 2 mana deal 3 is insane. Sure, it's slow speed, and I don't like slow speed, but this is good enough that if you can consistently activate this, which it's not hard to in the right deck because of multi-region cards, it's a good card. As long as you can consistently activate this, this is a really good tempo play if you are a tempo-based deck. I'm going to give it 3 stars. It does its job. 2 mana deal 3 is solid. Now then, Conchologist. I love this card. 2 mana, 2/2. Play, manifest a spell from your regions that cost 3 or less. Pretty solid. Gives you some good value. That extra point of health, so it's not a 2/1, is really nice, so it doesn't die to pings like Vile Feast and Go Hard and Make It Rain is really nice. There's a lot of good spells that cost 3 or less in every single region. You might get some removal, some card draw, some healing, etc., etc., combat tricks, whatever. Very solid card. I'm going to give it 4 stars. It's a little slow, and I will say sometimes you will get screwed over and the RNG just doesn't favor you. And while you do see 3 cards, sometimes all 3 cards just kind of suck. It's happened to me before. It'll happen to you as well if you play this card. So that's the only thing keeping this guy from getting that 5th star. Next up, Curious Shellfolk. 6 mana 4/6. When you pick a card from randomly selected options, create a copy in hand and reduce its cost by 1. This card has some cute plays you can do. So, first off, there's the obvious one. So, like invokes and manifest. That's cute. But then this also works with prank. This also works with predict, etc., etc. So, you got some cute stuff you can do here. Curious Shellfolk into prank. You get a copy of whatever you prank. Curious Shellfolk into predict. You get a copy of the cards you predict. And of course, it costs 1 less. Still, though, this card's super, super slow. Its stat line's good, though, and really thick and beefy, so it is a little hard to remove. So, if you can survive, I'd say, like, 2 more turns after summoning this and keep it alive for 2 turns, you get a lot of value. I'm gonna give it 1 star, though. It's so slow. It's so hard to live after you play a 6 mana 4/6 that basically does nothing when you play it. So I'm only giving it 1 star. I might, maybe in the future, I could see myself bumping it up to 2 stars if there's more and more basically like predict, manifest, prank, whatever kind of synergy cards. But for now, it's just 1 star because it's just too slow. But the value it does give you is crazy good. So only 1 star from me, though. Kind of cute for Victor, though, I'll say that. Next up. Oh, another darkness card. We got Dark Bulb Acolyte. 2 mana 2/2, augment. When I'm summoned, create a darkness in hand if you don't have one. Solid card. Probably outside of the champions, one of the best darkness generators. Comes down, gives you a darkness early, fights well for the board. Augment makes it keep growing since the darknesses will trigger augment. Becomes a kind of scary card to attack into because, you know, trading a big unit like a 5-drop for a 2-drop is always a feels bad kind of situation. Very solid card. I'm going to give it 4 stars. Little bad in the late game, I'll say. Like, sure, it gives you more darknesses in the late game, but it's still a 2/2 in the late game, so that's a little sad. Anyway, good card, though. Next up. Well, not such a good card. Double tap. 6 mana fast spell. An ally strikes an enemy. If the ally is multi-region, it strikes the enemy again. So the problem with this is it's expensive, but I don't think it's unplayable. I feel like if I'm playing a card like this, I need to play it on a multi-region card. And I need that multi-region card to have something on it that makes me want to strike twice. So impact. Well, impact doesn't work on strikes. It only works on attack, I think, right? Not sure. But lifesteal works too? I don't know. It's like Fury as well, but I don't think any multi-region cards have Fury or lifesteal at the moment, so I'm not sure. I don't like this card. It's just a little too expensive too. Like, let's say it's not a multi-region card you use to strike. It's only striking once. Like, sure, it's not like a single combat. The opponent's stuff is not fighting back, but I don't know. Comparing this to, say, like Concerted Strike, and sure, Concerted Strike's a top tier card, I just don't like it. I feel like there are better cards you could play if you want removal in almost any kind of deck. So I'll give it 1 star. There's some potential, but I think there needs to be more cards, better multi-region cards that want to strike twice before this card's a real thing. Next up. Entrapment. A buff cap card. 2 mana burst speed spell. Pick 1 of 3 units or spells from the enemy deck. Plant 3 poison puff caps on all copies of it. This card is trash. The only thing about this card is if you pick a card, since you can't see how many cards are in the opponent's deck, you're not exactly sure how many puff caps you're getting. You might only get 3 puff caps. Or if they have all 3 copies in their deck, you'll get 9. So, assuming you get all 9 copies, which isn't a guarantee, that is a best case scenario, and that's getting 9 puff caps in the enemy's deck, which is a lot of puff caps for 1 card, but like Mushroom Cloud, it's a very slow card. It's not really worth the slot in the deck. The card slot, so I'm gonna honestly give this 0 stars for this card. I just don't like it, in all honesty. I think it's just not good enough. Next up, what do we have here? Oh, Event Horizon. We talked about this with Vagar already a little bit. Um, as a champ spell, it's solid, but as a standalone spell, it's kind of meh. Maybe in the future with more stun cards in Bandle City, maybe a weird Yasuo, Ionia Bandle City deck can show up. But for now, I'm not a fan of it. Maybe as a one-of in control decks to slow your opponents down, but I'm not even that big of a fan of it. I'm giving it 1 star. It's not terrible, but meh. Oh, speaking about bad cards, welcome to a really bad card. Furious Feyfolk. 7 mana 5/4, multi-region card. Quick attack. When I'm summoned, if you've dealt damage to the enemy nexus 4 times, it gets impact 4. Sure. It's a 7 mana card. It's just too much mana. The only reason I think you should see this card is it was randomly generated from a card like the Mayor or something. Even Bandle Tree decks don't really like this because they have Aloof Travelers and Teemos for PNZ, so I don't like this card at all. Really only here to... The only reason you'll see it ever get played and constructed is because of randomly generated effects. So 0 stars from me. Next up, though. Group Shot. 1 mana fast spell. Deal 1 to an enemy. If you have 4+ allies, deal 2 instead. This card's solid. 1 mana, deal 1 at fast speed is not amazing. We have that in the form of... I can't even remember the name of it. It's the 1 mana, deal 1 to anything. It's in Noxus, and that's all it does is just deal 1 damage to anything. It's seen some fringe play, but never a lot. This card, though, on the other hand, can't hit Nexus. The trade-off is it does too if you have 4+ allies, and that's not that difficult to do because Bandle City's Swarm style decks are pretty solid in my opinion. Your opponent could, in theory, react to this card by playing their own fast spells to try and remove some of your stuff to bring it down from 2 damage back down to 1 damage, but it's still a solid card in my opinion. Very dependent though on how good dealing 2 at fast speed for 1 mana is, but solid spell in my opinion. So I will give it 3 whole stars. Very solid. Just it does what it does and does it well. Next up, the Allegiance card for Bandle City. Gruff Grenadier. 4 mana 4/3 impact. Kind of mediocre stat line for a 4-drop. Allegiance. Summon another Yordle follower that costs 3 or less. There's a lot of Yordles that are really good. I was considering listing them all over on the left, but there were way too many. So you'll have to just take my word for this. There's a lot of them that are good. Very, very solid card. Really nice with more swarm style decks. Impact helps you get a little bit of chip damage in as well. Just a great card overall. I'm gonna give this guy a nice 4 stars from me. Very nice card. Yeah, solid. Just solid card over here. Good value. Good at swarming the board. Great card. Next up. Well, not such a great card. Heroic Charge. 5 mana slow spell. An ally strikes an enemy. If it survives, stun it. This card is garbage. I don't think there's much to say here. Slow speed spells suck. Usually, sure, it's like a 5 mana, your unit strikes their unit, but I'm not a fan of this. And sure, it's nice that if your unit doesn't kill their unit, it stuns it, but slow speed really, really hurts this card. And 5 mana is a lot of mana, so I'm giving this 0 stars. I don't think Bandle City is that desperate for removal. It would play something like this. Next up, though, really good card. Hexplosive Minefield. I might be overrating this a little bit, but I like this card. 1 mana, when I'm summoned or destroyed, stun the strongest enemy. So, pretty solid card. Very, very good tempo. You do have to, in my opinion, be playing a deck that destroys landmarks, so a Xerath deck, Ziggs deck, etc., etc. But this is so much tempo, and it's a solid landmark to destroy too with your landmark destruction enablers. I'm gonna give this, I'm probably overrating this, I'll say. I'm giving it 5 whole stars. I think it's a really, really good card. Really annoying too. You play it when your opponent's gonna attack with their really big thing, like let's say like a Scion or something. Stunning it goes through spell shield too, so it can stun things like Severes and Ruin Runners. Very, very good card in general. And combined with rights of whatever it's called, the landmark destruction right, you get a lot of tempo there. You get to kill something and then stun another thing. So solid card in my opinion. What do we have next though? Oh, also solid card. Hidden Pathways, 5 mana burst speed spell. Cost 2 less if you've created 2 cards this game. Draw 2. That is not like created 2 cards that turn or anything. It's just for that game. That's so simple. Just playing something like Zillion, who creates all the time bombs, activates this card. This card is nuts. 5 mana, draw 2 is not really that amazing. You wouldn't really play that kind of card. 4 mana, draw 2 is already playable by itself. It's really, really, really easy to activate this card, and then it's just a 3 mana draw 2. Card's nuts. I don't think I need to talk too much about this card. People have played cards like Salvage, the 4 mana draw 2 toss 2, in decks that don't even care about the toss. Whispered Words, the 4 mana draw 2 reputation, it costs 2 less in decks that can't even activate reputation just because drawing cards is really good. This card, it's really easy to activate, and drawing 2 is so good. Easy 5 stars in my opinion. Well, what do we have next? Oh, hey, this card's good. This card's really, really good. Inventive Chemist. Solid card. 1 mana 2/1, solid stat line for its cost. When I'm summoned, summon a Scrappy Bomb. Scrappy Bomb is a 1 mana countdown 3, or when I'm destroyed, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. That 1 mana damage is not really important. Activates Plunder, I guess, but the more important thing is it's a landmark synergy card. It sets up your landmark destructions, summoning landmarks, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, solid 4 stars from me. It does its job. It does it really, really well. 2/1 for a 1 is a solid stat line as well. Beats down really well, blocks really well. Overall, great card. What do we have next? Oh, okay, garbage card. We already talked about this card with Poppy. It's Keeper's Verdict, 6 mana slow spell. Card's garbage. I don't think we have to talk too much about it. Just too expensive, and slow speed is keeping it from seeing any play, in my opinion. Yeah, 0 stars from me. If it was fast, sure, but yeah, it's not good enough in my opinion to see play in any kind of deck. Next up, Kelp Maidens. 2 mana, 2/1 Nexus Strike. Elusive. Create a prank in hand when you Nexus Strike. Solid card. I'm fine with it. It's similar to Sting Officer, just a little too fragile. Maybe a Fizz deck likes it to give it some extra cheap spells for Fizz. But that's all I can really see it being played in. Nami probably likes this card too a little bit, but not that much. So I like the card, but I don't know. I just think it's not doing enough. But I could see you playing this card as like a 2-of if you really want more 2-drops in your deck, and if you can do something with the pranks besides just the effect of a prank. So I'll give it a solid 2 stars. Next up, Lecturing Yordle. I like this card. 4 mana, 3/5. When I'm summoned or attack, create a fleeting Poison Dart in hand. Poison Dart is a 1 mana, deal 1 to anything, and plant 3 puff caps in the enemy deck. So it can go face as well. Go Nexus. Solid card. 4 mana, 3/5 is a good stat line. Non-existent Yordle synergy. Just feel like I should mention that. Even if your opponent kills it right away, you already get at least 1 Poison Dart. And if you go to attack in same turn you played it, you get 2 Poison Darts. That's 2 mana for 2 damage. That's basically a Mystic Shot. Sure, it's not fast speed, but that's pretty good. More pings is always annoying for 1 health units. So again, like we just saw the Kelp Maidens and more stuff. So solid card. We'll talk more about Poison Dart itself when we actually just look at Poison Dart by itself. But Lecturing Yordle, solid card, very decent 4-drop. Gonna give it a nice solid 3 stars. If it had like a keyword or something, I'd give it another star, but 4 stars for, or 3 stars for this guy. Now then, the other Targon card who I put into Bandle City because it's a multi-region card, Loping Telescope. 2-mana, 2/1. Play, manifest a random Celestial that costs 3 or less, an Epic, or a multi-region follower. So you'll see the Celestial, you'll see an Epic, and you'll see a multi-region follower. You choose one of them to add to your hand. I like the card. It's super, super good value. 1 health, in my opinion, holds it back a little bit. The fact that you might just see nothing good because there are some bad epics. You might see some bad multi-region cards like, I don't know, Furious Fey Folk. Sometimes, while most Celestials are good, pretty much all of them are good, sometimes you'll see a Celestial that's just not great in the matchup you're in. Like, you'll see a, I don't know, a Crescent Strike against a control deck or something. So, I like the card, but for all those reasons I just gave, I'm only going to give it 4 stars. If it was like a 2/2, I'd probably give it a 5th star, but there's a lot of pings in the game, so yeah, I'm only giving it 4 stars. It can also hit itself technically for multi-region followers, so you could kind of do the telescope and a telescope and a telescope train, which it's not reliable, but it's a cute thing you can do. But yeah, great value, really annoying, and it's good in a lot of decks, but RNG being able to fuck you over, and that 1 health is just a little bit of a liability for certain decks, is keeping it from getting that 5th star. Oh god, this card. Oh no. Mega Inferno Bomb, 7-mana slow spell, deal 1 to all allies, then do it again. This card's trash. I'm sorry. It's unplayable. It's way too expensive. It needs like some way to buff its damage, and even then it's just too much mana, and then slow speed as well really hurts. So I don't think I need to talk too much about this card. I feel like most people know this card is bad. 0 stars from me. What do we have next though? Oh, Mini Morph. Well, from bad card to great card. Mini Morph is a 6-mana burst spell that says transform an enemy into a 3/3 Mini Minity and silence it. Mini Minity is just a 3-mana 3/3 with no text. All right. Pretty solid. The fact that it's a burst speed spell is why this card is nuts in my opinion. 6 mana is a lot of mana. Don't get me wrong. That is a lot of mana, and against more aggressive decks like Pirate Burn, Discard Aggro, Elusives, it is a little bit of a liability, but even against those more aggressive decks, you still have a couple of targets for this card, like Gangplanks, Misfortunes, Lulus, Jinxes, etc., etc. And against the more late game oriented decks, this card wins games. So, you know, think against like Scion, Lee Sin, Karma, Aurelian Soul. You just win games if you mini morph those kind of things. So I'm gonna give it 4 stars though. I'm giving it only 4 stars instead of 5 stars, even though I think this card might get nerfed in the future, because while I said it does have some targets in faster matchups, it's still 6 mana, and your opponent still gets the 3/3, so they can still use the 3/3 as a beater. Like, let's say you mini morph a Misfortune. It's still a 3/3 they're still going to be able to attack in with, and you spent 6 mana for removing Misfortune effect, basically. So yeah, only 4 stars for me for that reason, but still a solid card. Now, who do we have next? Mirror Mage. I like this card. 8 mana 4/7. When you play a created follower, summon an exact copy. When you play a created spell, cast it again on the same targets. So value the card, but it's an 8 mana 4/7. It's 8 mana, basically. Way, way, way too expensive. But there's some cute things you can do with this card. if you do get an extra turn after you've played this card, there's some cute stuff you can do. Basically, think like playing pranks basically gives you double pranks. Playing celestials, like any of the big celestials, like, I don't know, Great Beyond, gives you a second copy of them, Immortal Fire, etc., etc. But again, it's an 8 mana card. It's way slow. Insanely good value, though, but it's just a little too expensive. 4/7 stat line's nice, so it does survive a lot of stuff, but it's just too expensive in my opinion. So for that reason, I'm giving it 1 star. Great value, and if you can somehow build a deck that is able to last long enough, this card will win games. It's sort of like a unit follower. Yeah, it's sort of like a follower version of Karma, kind of. Now then, speaking of pranks, Otterpuss. 1 mana, 1/1 attune. Nice. So it's kind of like a free card. When I'm summoned, create a prank in hand. This card's solid. I like it. It's just, it does a lot, but it also takes up a card in the deck. And sometimes I think you can cut this card from a deck for more high impact cards in the right deck, like a control deck. But you're using 1 card to get a 1 mana 1/1. Sure, you're getting your mana back too. And then you can prank, and then you get a little bit of information from your opponent, and you get to mess with the card you do prank. I'm giving it 4 stars. It's just a little, I don't know. It's an annoying card, but it's hard to get a whole card worth of value from this card. And yes, I know, sure, you're basically giving up a card's worth of value for the information and for pranking your opponent's hand. But then, yeah, in my opinion, you have to struggle to try and find some way for the 1 mana 1/1 to get value, which is a little tough, but not bad. But still, solid card in my opinion. Very, very good in the right deck. So I give it 4 stars. And Poison Dart. We talked about this already with Lecturing Yordle a bit. Solid card. Slow speed kind of hurts it a bit, but 1 mana, deal 1 to anything is a solid card. Being able to go Nexus and hit the face is really nice. Pretty good for Teemo decks. Helps get rid of annoying things. Just annoying like 1/1s and 2/1s and whatever. So very solid card. I like it. I'm going to give it a nice solid 2 stars. Outside of Teemo decks, I think it's unplayable, but in Teemo decks, it's fine as like a 2 or even a 3 of. Helps level up Teemo quickly too. Like playing this and having a Puffcap Peddler on the field is really annoying. What do we have next though? Pompous Cavalier. 3 mana 1/1, double attack. Not much to talk about here. Multi-region card too, also in Demacia. Yeah, I don't really know how to evaluate this guy. Very fragile, but if you can get any kind of buffs on him, he can get annoying, but that's a little bit tough. I'll give it 1 star because double attack can be scary if you can give it buffs, and I think there is some potential here. What do we have next? Puffcap Pup. 2 mana 2/2 quick attack. Strike. Plant 3 poison Puffcaps on random cards in enemy deck. Obviously a card for Teemo. Pretty much just Teemo. But I think even in a Teemo deck, there are better cards than Puffcap Pup you can play for the 2-drop slot and just in general. It is an annoying card to deal with for your opponents, but I just think there are better cards. It can be used to level up Teemo quickly if you can go like turn 1 Teemo, turn 2 Puffcap Pup. That does level up Teemo quickly, but meh. So I'll give it 1 star. I just think there are better options here for a Teemo Puffcap deck anyway. Next up, Purple Berry Shake. I like this card. 1 mana burst speed spell. Grow an ally to 3/3 this round. Pretty much just a protection spell for your small yordles, so like Fizz and Teemo basically. Your opponent tries to kill it, you Purple Berry Shake them, keep them safe, and then you hit them even harder because of the Purple Berry Shake. So solid 2 stars for me. Not a great combat trick and protection spell, but solid. Like this Troll Chant, this is not, in other words. Okay. Safety Inspector. I really think I'm overrating this guy, but I like him. 6 mana, 6/6. Round start, create an inspection past in hand, which is a 0 mana fleeting spell, slow speed spell, destroy an allied landmark to deal 3 to anything. That is good. It's Noxian Fervor, but it's 0 mana, and yeah, it's slow speed, of course, but it's harder to counter for an opponent because it's not targeting a unit, it targets a landmark to destroy. The only problem I have with this card is great stat line, sure, and great effect, but 1, you need to wait around to get the first inspection passed. 2, you need landmarks, and I'm just not sure you'll have enough. But as more and more landmarks come out that want to get destroyed, this card, in my opinion, gets better and better, since you can hit anything. You can hit your opponent's units, you can hit champions, you can hit Nexus. This card's fine. Solid card. 2 stars for me. I like it as like a 1 or a 2 of. Yeah, very good card. What do we have next, though? Oh, very bad card. We got Shark Trainer. Shark Trainer is a 7 mana 6/6 with a tune. When allies attack, spend 1 spell mana to summon an attacking Short Tooth. Short Tooth is a 1 mana 4/2 with Overwhelm. There's some cute memes you can do. It's also a multi-region card, so I guess I should mention that for like Bandle Tree effects and stuff, but The only reason I feel like you should see this card in constructive play is it gets randomly generated from like a Mayor or a Telescope. Outside of that, I think there's just better late game you can play. There's some cute stuff you can do with like scouts, and you can scout to get multiple Short Tooth if you have the spell mana, but meh. That's just not good enough, in my opinion, to actually want to play this card. So I'll give this card 0 stars. I just don't think it does enough to justify the 7 mana cost. Next up, Shell Game. Refill your spell mana. 5 mana burst speed spell. So you're kind of getting 3 of that spell mana back. Or 3 of that mana back. Give an ally elusive and +1/+1 this round. Like, yeah, you're getting the mana, some of it back, but you still need to actually have 5 mana to cast a spell, which is a little bit tough to ask for in the mid game for this effect. And yeah, you can use it as like a finisher by giving a unit elusive, and you can use it as a combat trick to give something elusive to block an elusive. I just feel it's a little too clunky, and I just don't think any kind of deck likes this ability, in all honesty. Because I feel like a more aggressive deck would just, its units would already have elusive, and a control deck would rather just play removal to kill an elusive. So I'm not a fan of it. I'll give it 1 star, though, because it does remind me a little bit of a worse Sharp Sight, if that makes sense. Like, it kind of is a 2 mana give something +1/+1 and elusive this round, kind of, because of the refilling spell mana, but not really. And so it's kind of like Sharp Sight, but it's not Sharp Sight in my opinion, because part of the strength of Sharp Sight is +2/+2, not just +1/+1. So yeah, I like it, but just not good enough. Oh hey, Stilted Roadmaker, a darkness card. 4 mana 3/4. When I'm summoned, reduce the cost of your darkness everywhere by 1 mana. I like this card. The only problem that I have with this card is it's a little slow, and you only really want to play 1 or 2 of them ever in a game. Sure, because like going from 3 to 2 mana for your darkness is nice. Going from 2 to 1 is also nice, but it's diminishing returns in my opinion. So I feel like while darkness players would love to be able to play 1 and always draw it and be able to play it, it's unlikely you'll actually find it, so unless you play 3 copies, and that's a little too many, so I don't know. I like the card, but I don't know with this card. I like it. I just don't think it does enough. So I'll give it 2 stars though. I think it's fine as a 2 of in darkness decks, but that's all it goes into, and that's it. Solid stat line, really nice defensive stat line, and it is a good effect, but meh. What do we have next though? Oh, also meh. Stone Stackers. 2-mana 2/2. Tough impact. That's it. Yordle card though, so in the future, Yordle synergy might help this card out. But as it stands now, this card is kind of meh. There are so many better 2-drops in the game than this thing. I'm giving it 0 stars. There's not much to talk about with it, in all honesty. Next up, Stress Defense. Love this card. 3-mana burst speed spell. Set a unit stats to 1/6 this round. You can target your own stuff. You can target enemy stuff. You can target things like Scion. You can also, it's also a 3-mana spell, so Tri-Beam synergy is also nice. Always a nice thing though. Not really a 3 of though, but it's nice. It's got some cute synergy with some, I'd say, what are they called? Strikes cards, but meh. Pretty much just here as like, it's like the premier combat trick, I'd say, for Bandle City. Yeah, this is like the protection spell for Bandle City is the best way, in my opinion, to put this. It's kind of trying to be Bandle City's Troll Chant. Does it succeed? No. But I think it's good. I think it's a solid card. So for that reason, I like it as like a 2 of to a 3 of in my Bandle City decks that are more controlly and want to protect their own units. The flexibility is nice though, but it's Troll Chant. It's not. So 3 mana. 3 mana. Sorry. 3 stars. If it was 2 mana, this card would actually be a lot better, but yeah, just 3 stars for me. Oh yeah, this card. Okay, sorry about this. We have Swole Scout. Sorry. You're very swole, but Swole Scout is a 4-mana 3/2. When I'm summoned, if you've added 2 cards to your hand this round, grant me +1/+0 and elusive. The card is bad. Even if it was just a 4-mana 4/2 elusive, I still would say it's bad. But the fact that you have to basically get that second card added to your hand that round just to be a 4-mana 4/2 elusive holds it back from seeing any kind of serious play, in my opinion. Maybe a Bandle City kind of elusive deck can shape up in the future, but I have no faith in this card. Very, very great artwork, but I'm sorry, it's gonna get 0 stars from me. Next up, Tenor of Terror, 4-mana 2/3 impact. When I'm summoned, if you've played a created card or killed a unit with a spell this game, summon a Base of Burden, which is a 4-mana 3/2 impact card. Solid card. Also a multi-region card, so get some multi-region synergies there. Shadow Isles, Bandle City card. It helps you go wide. It's fine. That's all. That's like, it's just solid. The fact that it's a 2/3 and the base is a 3/2 does mean it gets to sort of survive against things like Avalanche, because the tenor at least survives, even though the base will die. So that's cute. I'll give it 3 stars. It's fine. Very just okay, solid card. Floods the board. So yeah, that's it. Now then, I love this card. The Arsenal. 8 mana, 8/6. I have a random keyword for each allied landmark you destroy this game. So it'll keep getting landmarks as you destroy, or it will keep getting keywords as you destroy landmarks while it's already on the field. So let's say you've destroyed 5 landmarks and then you summon this, and then you destroy another landmark after this is on the field. It'll get a 6th keyword. Solid card. Very, very strong. has some cute synergies with cards that basically resummon it, like Hourglass, Ancient Hourglass, because it will double the keywords it gets basically. Yeah, very solid finisher. This card is what Victor wishes he was. Pretty much your finisher for landmark destruction decks. This card is why, in my opinion, landmark based decks, landmark destruction decks are not a joke. Also, it's a way to gain life if you destroyed enough landmarks or get lucky in general. So solid 5 stars from me. Destroy enough landmarks until it gets every single keyword in the game, basically, in which case it will then just start stacking up more and more impact. And then you'll have like Spell Shield, Elusive, Challenger, Scouts, etc., etc. Lifesteal, Regeneration, whatever. This card's nuts. It is a little slow, though, at 8 mana, but it just closes out games so fast, in my opinion. So I'm giving it a whole 5 stars. Oh, well, we've gone from great to awful. Yeah, trash is trash. I'm sorry. Treasure Trash is a bad card. 10 mana slow spell, fill your hand with random cards. They cost 0 and are fleeting. You can only play 3 more cards this round. I get it. There's the cute meme with stress testing, but that's all this card is a meme. 0 stars for me. Next up. Actually, it is cute if you can get it from a, like, random generation, a card that generates cards randomly. It's kind of a pretty solid card that way, but don't play it in your deck. Next up, though, what do we have? Oh, this card. Also trash. Tricksy Tentacles. 2 mana fast speed spell. Your opponent discards their lowest cost card. Discard spells can be good. Like, you're usually going 1-for-1 against your opponent. The problem is you're not getting any kind of information about their hand. Sure, the fact that it's fast does help out a little, but sometimes against certain decks, you might not even have a good chance to actually cast this card. Like, your opponent might have Ignitions from Ballistic Bots, Spinning Axes from Dravens, which would make this card a little awkward. And it doesn't really affect the board. Like, I don't want to play a 2-mana spell that's not affecting the board. I want to affect the board. Like, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of this card. I feel like this is a card you're going to pick from cards that randomly generate other cards like Conchologist to try and slow your opponent down or something, but I would not play this in my decks ever, so I'll give it 0 stars. Maybe in the future, if there's like some kind of weird like card that says if your opponent discards a card, do a thing, maybe a card like this can see play, but as it stands now, this card's bad. Well, this card's great. Trinket Trade. 1 mana burst speed spell. Manifest an Otterpuss. We already know what Otterpuss does. Or one of 2 spells from your regions that cost 3 or less. So it's like you can either get like one of 2 spells or an Otterpuss. So you always know you're going to see an Otterpuss at the very least. This card is solid. 1, it helps you, it gives you some nice spell synergy too. That's great. Otterpuss is always there in case one of the 2 spells is not good. And you're at least a Bandle City deck, so you have some solid cards to choose from in Bandle City. So I think this card is a very great card. I'm giving it a whole 5 stars. Versatility is great. It is a little slow because sure, it's only 1 mana, but it does take some time, and RNG could screw you, so you have to take the Otterpuss instead of a spell, and sometimes you're like, well, the Otterpuss doesn't do much here in this matchup anyway, but it's still solid in general overall. I like it as a 3-of in a lot of decks that are more slower, value-oriented decks. Next up. Our final champion, I believe, Tristana. She's fine. I'm sorry, but she's okay. 3 mana, 1/3 quick attack. I have +1/+0 for each multi-region ally you've summoned this game. When you summon a multi-region ally, granted +1/+0. To level up Tristana, you have to have summoned 4+ multi-region allies. She's really easy to level up. And her champion spell is Buster Shot. Great champion spell. When Tristana levels, though, now she does pretty much the same thing she did before, but now she also gives impact along with the +1/+0 to the multi-region allies. She's fine. The only problem I have with this card is the kind of deck she wants to go in is probably a Bandle Tree deck, and I feel like a Bandle Tree deck would play a different champion that's a multi-region champion, like a Teemo or a Fizz or something else. If Tristano had a second region and was a multi-region card, maybe, because then she would also get a discount from the mayor as well. So, I don't know. Maybe a non-Bandle Tree multi-region kind of carrying deck would play her, but I don't know. She's kind of weird. She reminds me of LeBlanc in that she's just solid. Like, she doesn't win games, but I don't know. Solid champ spell, just solid overall card. I'll give her 4 stars, though. Probably overrating her a little bit, but I think she's a solid card. Easy to level up, but that's because her level up's not that great, but whatever. Next up. Oh, it's a darkness card. Twisted Catalyzer. 2-mana 3/2, strike, grant your darkness everywhere, 1 extra damage. The only other way besides Vhagar to give darkness extra damage, this guy's pretty much just going to die the turn he is summoned and attacks, because it's really easy to trade for a 3/2 on 2. That's fine, though. Very kind of cute things you can do is stress defense, because you can use it to protect it with stress defense and try and get multiple strikes with this guy, but I don't think you have to do that too much. But yeah, this card's solid. A little bit mediocre in the late game. Very bad in kind of a top deck war against your opponent, but it does its job in the early game, which is buffing your darkness. I'll give it a solid 3 stars. Pretty good stat line too. Next up, pretty bad card. Wizened Wizard. 3-mana 3/2. Round start, refill 1 spell mana. This card's bad. I don't think I have to tell you too much about this card. Maybe if the guy had a tune as well, so you could get some spell mana right away, but yeah, this guy doesn't do anything. I'm giving him 0 stars. He's just not enough. Bandle City's not desperate enough for 3 drops. The only time I think you will ever see this card see play is if your opponent is playing a deck that's so bad, but they really need a 3-drop, and they're going to play Wizened Wizard, because this card is bad. What do we have next? Yordle Contraption. The Landmark Destruction spell, Landmark Destruction card for Bandle City. It's bad. 5-mana slow spell, destroy a landmark, or create 2 random multi-region followers in hand. This card is awful. Card's way too expensive, way too slow for either of its forms, either of its modes, whatever you want to call it. You might say, well, streamer, isn't that the point? Because you're getting choices, it kind of sucks, and both sides are inefficient. Yes, but it's bad. Both of them are bad. Like, 5-mana slow speed, destroy landmarks, awful. If this card was fast, maybe I would play this as a one-of in certain decks, but I don't like this. I'm giving it 0 stars. Bandle Tree decks don't want it. It's too slow for those kind of decks. Maybe in a very, very landmark-heavy meta where you need landmark destruction, maybe this card's fine, but the problem with that kind of meta is that kind of meta will never show up, because Draven Scorched Earth decks can always show up. Noxus Scorched Earth decks in general. Next up. Oh, also a bad card. Yordle Newbie. 3-mana 3/2. When I'm summoned, if you've added 2 cards to your hand this round, grant me +1/+2. So it becomes a 3-mana 4/4, and that's it. Garbage card. Maybe with some Yordle synergy, it'll be saved and be a little bit playable, but as it stands now, 0 out of 5 stars. Just awful. Next up. Yordle Ranger, 6-mana 5/5 scout, multi-region card with Demacia. Attack, grant me and all allies with equal or less power than me +0/+1. It's a fine card. Mostly for more of a multi-region deck. Kind of mediocre in all honesty for Demacia decks, because they have both Cytherea and Genevieve. So I think it's fine as like a one of in multi-region cards to get that Demacia. Basically check the Demacia box in your Bandle tree list, but that's it. I'm not a big fan of it. Buffing some of your units up is kind of cute though to get them out of range of removal of like avalanche and stuff, but it's not enough. Next up, Yordlesmith. I underestimated this guy when I first saw him because I did not realize he gave quick attack to himself. 2-mana 2/2, attack, give all allies with equal or less power than me quick attack this round. This guy is nuts. This guy makes combat so tricky because, well, one, you can buff him up so he gives quick attack to more things, and while he's easy to remove, the kind of deck you're playing him in is a swarmy deck who you need to remove everything. So, you got Yordlesmith, Mayors, Lulus, Poppies, etc., etc. Still, though, he's just fine. He's solid. He does what he does. He's annoying at it. I'm giving him 3 stars, though, so that's all he's getting. Only a couple cards left, I believe. Yordle Squire. I like this card. 1 mana 2/1. Play it. Create a Tiny Spear or Tiny Shield in hand. Tiny Spear is a focus speed +1/+0. They're both 1 mana. Tiny Shield is a focus speed +0/+1. Solid card. 1 mana 2/1s I've talked about numerous times is a solid stat line for a 1-drop. I feel like you really need to do something with the spell and get some good spell synergy from the shield or the spear. Giving an elusive some extra health or extra attack is really cute. Like Fizz, of course, is a good example. Giving Fizz an extra point of health is really nice. Being able to use these cards as a way to activate Fizz is nice too. Just overall solid card. Very good 1-drop. One of the best 1-drops in the game, in my opinion. Especially probably for Bandle City. Really solid 1-drop for them. Kind of mediocre in the late game. And if you're not getting great value out of the spear or shield, it is a little bit mediocre. So I'll give this only 1 star. Now then, the last card, I believe. Yordles in Arms. 5 mana, slow spell. Give allies +2/+2 this round. If you've summoned or cast cards from 4 regions, 4+ regions, give allies +4/+4 this round. So we've seen a card like this in the form of 4 Demacia. 4 Demacia is a 6 mana slow spell that says give allies +3/+3 this round. So this card is 1 mana cheaper, and you're only playing this in a deck that is activating it, in other words. So you're only going to play this deck or this card in a deck that can actually get the 4+ regions summoned. I like this card as like a 1 to a 2 of in a swarmy, maybe a multi-region deck. So, something with like Bandle City Mayors, Poppies, Lulus, etc. Very cute as well with rallies. The Yordlesmith likes this as well. So I think it's a solid card. I'm going to give it a whole 2 stars though. Fine as like a 1 of or a 2 of for like a little extra oomph for a finisher, but that's all. Anyway, that's all 10 regions. We finally made it to the end of this video. That's a lot of talking I've done. I'm gonna go and eat something. I'm really hungry now, but again, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Thank you all for watching, and thank you all for listening. I'd love to hear your opinions on a lot of these cards I've talked about, whether you think I'm dumb with some cards, and I'm underrating or overrating cards, and why you think so. I would love to hear your comments down below. If you just enjoyed the video in general, I'd love it if you'd leave a comment or like down below anyway. And if you guys want to keep up with the Legends of Runeterra content, you can always go and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to watch me play some Legends of Runeterra, you can always go and check me out over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Zenaton. I stream there pretty much every single day, especially nowadays because of the new set. Anyway, though, with that all said and done, thank you all once more for watching this video. And until I see you guys in the next one, bye!